Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. A very warm welcome to the CNN-News18 Townhall, the Defense Edition, coming to you live from New Delhi. Now, in the wake of Operation Sindoor, India's precision retaliatory campaign showcasing the strategic integration of our tri-services, we stand at a pivotal moment in redefining our national defense and deterrence doctrine. So it is a privilege to host this congregation of seasoned valor and strategic acumen, India's finest serving officers, elite policy makers, and also stalwart technocrats and border guarding personnel, all gathered under one roof. In today's conversation, we march from borders to business, the strength of Bharat, where we examine the robust sinews of our defense infrastructure, the rapid rise of indigenous technologies, and the forging of India's geopolitical resolve. A special word of thanks to our partners who made this gathering possible. CNN-News18 Townhall, the Defense Edition, is co-powered by LIC, with associate partners Kalpataru, Amber Wings, and Reliance Industries Limited. And to officially kick things off, I'd like to invite someone who's been at the helm of India's biggest news stories, CNN News 18's managing editor. Please welcome Zaka Jacob.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's lovely to have your company, your presence here this afternoon as we celebrate what India managed to achieve in those 4 days, those 88 hours between the 7th of May and the 10th of May. We all know this as Operation Sindoor. It's been a month and a half since that happened, but we still don't know the entire gamut or the magnitude of what India managed to achieve. It has redefined not just the history of India and Pakistan, because clearly this was the most visible military operation, the most visible damage that India had left on the enemy in the last 50 plus years. The last time we had this kind of extent of impact because of a military operation, you have to go all the way back to the 1971 war, both in terms of scale and also its breadth. So what India managed to achieve during those 4 days and how it redefines the paradigm of warfare. We've seen, for example, for the first time in the context of Operation Sindoor, drones becoming mainstream. Drones have now become, as Group Captain here was telling me a moment ago, they are the tip of the spear now. They are the first line of attack. It completely changes the way military doctrine is theorized and certainly the way military doctrines are put into practice. So lots of learnings from what happened during Operation Sindoor, and we have a special set of guests. This is for the very first time that at an event like this, hosted by a media organization, that some of the insiders, the people who were involved firsthand in Operation Sindoor, either at the planning level or at the execution level, the insiders serving defense officers will be here on this platform and sharing their experience of what was achieved and what was learned during Operation Sindoor. So it's a pleasure to welcome all of you. Just a quick word on the town halls itself. It's now CNN News 18's signature congregation of policymakers. Usually, we bring in politicians here for the town hall to try and get a sense of, the direction in which our country is moving, policies are moving. But this time, for the Defense Edition, and by the way, this is the first ever Defense Summit, a Defense edition of a town hall that's being hosted by any media organization. So can we have a round of applause for that? And the fact that it's happening in the immediate aftermath of Operation Sindoor is something that we are very proud of. It's a privilege to be hosting this and giving our platform to, like I said, some of the people who are closely involved and associated with Operation Sindoor, both in the planning and the execution of it. And I hope these next 3 hours are an enriching learning experience for all of you who've come here. Many of you are ex-service personnel or related to ex-service personnel, folks who are now in private industry who are contributing to our weapon systems. So I hope it's an enriching 3 hours for you here at the CNN News 18 Town Hall, the Defense Edition, from the entire family of CNN News 18. I'd like to welcome you all once again. There is a small audiovisual presentation that we've made, after which we will go to our first guest. Thank you.
In the early hours of May 7, India acted with precision, purpose, and power. Operation Sindoor, a successful mission that reaffirmed India's rising capability to defend, deter, and dominate.
हमने आतंक के उन ठिकानों को तबाह किया जिनकी पाकिस्तान ने कल्पना तक नहीं की थी.
But behind every mission is a mission bigger still. The drive to make India a global powerhouse in indigenous defense manufacturing.
हमारी सेनाओं ने भारत में बने हथियारों से दुश्मन को 22 मिनट में घुटने टेकने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया.
From vision to victory, India's defense sector is transforming. From importer to innovator, the world is watching. From battlefield success to boardroom strategy, the road to Atmanirbhar Bharat begins here. Because national security begins with national self-reliance. CNN News 18 Town Hall, the Defense Edition.
Ladies and gentlemen, we begin with our first Power Pack session now, the age of modern warfare. Now, in today's strategic environment, threats have evolved across land, across sea, air, also cyber, space, and increasingly the unmanned domain. From UAV, the swarms there, and loitering munitions to precision missiles and cyber electronic warfare. The battlefield, in fact, has become truly multi-domain. So this particular session that we have for all of you, it asks that critical question: how prepared is India for next-gen conflicts? Joining us is Air Marshal Ashutosh Dikshit, Chief of Integrated Defense Staff, the officer responsible for synchronizing joint war fighting, surveillance and precision strike capabilities across all three services. And moderating that discussion is Zaka Jacob. Welcome, sir.
Air Marshal Dikshit, thank you very much for joining us here at the CNN News 18 Town Hall, the Defense Edition. As somebody who has coordinated and been at the forefront of many such joint operations involving all the three services, first thing that I want to ask you is, what, according to you, were the successes of the interagency and inter-services coordination and cooperation that you saw in those 4 days of Operation Sindoor?
Thank you, Jaka, for calling me here. You see, this integration, jointness and coordination, this effort were started way back after the Kargil conflict had ended. Thereafter, headquarter IDS was set up, whose main job was to create jointness and integration. Thereafter, major change happened when we got a CDS, and from there it took off almost vertically. In the bargain, we have set up three agencies. One is Defense Intelligence Agency, Defense Cyber Agency, and Defense Space Agency. So apart from jointness and integration among services, we are also doing coordination with these agencies. And let me tell you, this operation which was undertaken was a culmination of such a long effort, and it gives us immense satisfaction that whatever we have been doing correctly. Selection of targets, intelligence planning, joint planning, coordination centers, everything happened actually quite nicely. One more point I would like to emphasize is this has, we have not borrowed this model from anywhere. We have grown this organically. So that is one major difference between other people and what we are trying to do. Highly effective, I can say, in one word.
If there are any takeaways or examples that you would like to highlight where you saw integration work effectively between the three services in the context of Operation Sindoor, because it's the first large-scale military operation we've had after the integration came through.
Okay. So two things stand out. First is selection of target. For that, the intelligence required was of very, let's say, high order. It had to be very precise, and the amount of information we gathered, we sifted through, it couldn't have happened if there was no coordination or there was no support from all the possible agencies. All the possibilities. Again, I want to highlight this. The second is communication. You see, integration cannot be achieved if common communication protocols are not available. This we could achieve. Whatever you are seeing and whatever videos you are playing, it is happening just because we have common communication protocols now. So this is the thing which I want to give as example.
So, sir, earlier this month in a seminar here in Delhi, you had said, and I quote, Operation Sindoor demonstrated that indigenous innovation, when it's properly harnessed, it can match and sometimes even exceed international benchmarks. You particularly mentioned the IAF's Integrated Air Command and Control Systems, IACCS. There's been a lot of good things written about Akash Tir, the indigenous air defense systems. Tell us, again, in the context of Operation Sindoor, because it's the first major military operation where we saw indigenous weapon systems being deployed. What was your experience of the indigenous weapon systems, particularly the Akash Tir and other weapon systems that were natively developed?
So, IACCS and Akash Tir are part of our effort towards network-centric warfare. This, we have been at it for some time now. In my earlier postings and assignments, I was directly in charge of IACCS, so it is close to my heart. And this time we could now integrate it with the army network, which is Akash Tir. So this indigenization effort has actually really played and it has paid us great dividend. So some specific examples I will give you. We have been able to integrate IACCS with our various surface-to-air missiles, and we are able to control them sitting far away. It is not a mean achievement; it's a very great achievement. Second is that drone and counter drone, both were almost exclusively made in India. And if you see a lot of coverage, they have already got the kind of waves which we are getting. Everything was getting neutralized by our own homegrown systems. So that is where the military capability which we developed has come in a lot of help to us. We have also learned a lot of valuable lessons which we are working on. This is the main job of headquarter ideas, to integrate and put everything together.
So when you said, the majority of the drones and counter drones were indigenously developed, this was also the first time, at least in the context of India-Pakistan, we saw drones emerging as sort of the first line of attack. What are the lessons therein, especially because you're a Air Force man? Does this completely redefine the paradigm of warfare as we know it?
Not redefined. It is a new tool in the... So the old tools are there. If you look at the history of warfare, over the years, newer and newer weapon systems, capabilities are being added. So nowadays we talk of multi-domain warfare. So like cyber also is weaponized, space is getting sort of weaponized, information is getting weaponized. So this is a new tool or new weapon which is available. It is giving me more and more options of say, force generation and force projection. That is our opinion. It is not going to replace anything if that is the intent of a question.
No, more than replace, does that become the first rung of the escalation ladder, or the first step of the escalation ladder?
It may be first rung, it may be several rungs later, because it is coming into multiple and different capabilities. The ranges are different, the effect which it can bring is different, the kind of targeting philosophies are different. So it may be utilized almost in the beginning or maybe sometime. It depends upon the type of, let's say, campaign which we are planning.
The other thing that got redefined with Sindur, I think, to some extent, is, these lines. For example, the line of control. If you go back 10, 15 years ago when 26/11 happened, there was this huge debate about, can we send our planes across the LC and hit? This time, both on the operation that happened on the 7th morning where the terror targets were hit and also the intervening night between 9th and 10th, all of it happened from hundreds of kilometers inside our own territory. Again, how does that lower the threshold of war, or does that add a new dimension to warfare as we know it?
No, it does not lower threshold. Actually, the other side is aware that such capability now exists. So it should even out actually the desire to, let's say, do any act which is against our national policies. You see, this threshold which you are talking of, the number of it is becoming more and more finer. Actually, the number of steps within the same space have increased, and one of the steps is actually being usurped by these drones. That is what we are thinking.
No, for example, the Scalps or the BrahMos, they were launched from very much within our territory. So the need, for example, and even when you go back to 2019, what happened in Balakot, the need for our fighter jets to cross the line and hit on the other side, and vice versa, it applies to them also as much as it applies to us. Yes. Does that change the paradigm of warfare?
It changes in the meaning that I can respond without crossing the borders. That is one thing, and I think that has what made our government say and state new normal, for which we are actually always prepared. So I can now attack, or I can engage targets, which we have also shown, without crossing the border, with high precision, without any collateral damage. This was not possible maybe some time back, but now it is possible. Similarly, we have to develop capabilities to safeguard our installations against this. That is also a lesson which everybody is talking about.
So in that context, you reckon the importance of air defense systems becomes much more, almost quintessential?
Yeah, air defense. So air defense we have been harping on for a very long time. Indian Air Force did this layered air defense system, and we have taken along Indian Army and Navy also along. So this air defense is the thing which is to have. You should have very strong defense if you want to go on.
A moment ago you mentioned, we've now defined a new normal. What is this new normal as per your understanding?
So our threshold which is there, what we had said earlier, that is being redefined. And it means that the capabilities which we have will be brought to bear whenever at the place of our choosing and our decision. So this is what is new normal. Our Prime Minister has already stated it. So it is our job to deliver that promise.
So if I may just elaborate on that point. So the idea that the enemy can use these terror proxies, because ultimately that was the objective of Operation Sindoor, the idea that the enemy can use these terror proxies and get away with it, that has been redefined, you reckon? You think?
Yeah, so that level of deterrence has actually set at a very high level. That is the meaning of this.
The other thing, I know there are things that you can and cannot say, but I'm going to try and push my luck a little bit. How much damage did we cause in Pakistan?
Yeah, so the damage you have shown already, and it was made visible on national television in the briefings which armed forces conducted. The damage was clearly visible. So that's the damage which we we came to know from satellite images, from our own recce platforms, and from some open source material also, which got verified. So tremendous amount of damage was done. So every time it is said that 88 hours, some 88 hours you say. So this 88 hours itself says a lot about the damage which has been caused. Otherwise, no say self-respecting nation or armed forces will capitulate in such a short time.
So I'm going to push a little more on that question. Did you hit Kirana Hills?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? और ये भी बता दीजिएगा कि नूर खान में क्या हुआ?
We are.
It's evident.
No,
what
it is
happened.
all aware. All of you must have seen the video there of footage of Noor Khan.
This time you also attached cameras to the drones and to the jets as well, because I believe there was footage available from some of the missions that were sent as well.
Yeah, so some drones, they have cameras available on them, basically to guide them or to use it for targeting.
Was there also a lesson from Balakot?
The amount, you see, every time we are trying to innovate. So Balakot was a subdued operation. This was a longish type of operation. And the damage in this, which Pakistanis had done in this, it was to civilian people. So it had to be, let's say, proportionate in manner of speaking. Yes.
So you also, I want to come back to the indigenization question, because you've been involved with, indigenization initiatives in the past, whether it's the Jaguar upgrade, whether it's the MiG-27 upgrade. Particularly because Operation Sindoor, you said one of the new paradigms is drones. The other is about the emphasis on air defense systems. What, in your view, is going to be the next big technological leap as you see it?
Yeah, so technological leap is we have to keep going deeper and deeper. We have to be more precise. We have to see farther and farther. And we have to put all this together as quickly as possible. So we are going into network-centric warfare. That is that is the base layer actually, and on that different applications will reside, which will be inside Su-30 upgrade or new AMCA or LCA Mark II, or maybe a lot of drones and UAVs, UCAVs, which are being procured. Also, this integration of different domains, cyber going on to kinetic, is the next challenge, and this is where we are working. So if you look that we have already started the space domain, we are already launching SBS-3 maybe next year, and similarly cyber capabilities we are enhancing. Air defense we have already talked about, that we are enhancing. Long range weapons, that is the integration of long range weapons, realization of long range weapons, that work is also in earnest is going on.
So you talked about AMCA and LCA too. I know this has been an ongoing thing about the delays in some of these projects. Are you confident that those are getting addressed, particularly in light of Sindoor now?
Yeah, I have been very confident. I have flown LCA, and it's a wonderful platform. So there was a lot of upheaval in the world in the last, let's say, since COVID struck. And after that, this geopolitical situation has not been very good. So because of which there was up and down, but I think that is past us. This is also a major lesson learned by all of us, that indigenization is the way to go. You should have a self-reliant defense industry, and that is the way we are going. So LCA Mark II and AMCA, I am fairly certain we will get. So delay is part and parcel of this, nothing to get worried about.
And you don't ever think that there is a school of thought, like for example, Elon Musk believes the era of fighter jets is over, that drones will replace fighter jets and fighter pilots. You don't think that such a thing is ever going to happen?
So I don't think so in our lifetime we are going to see that. It is not going to happen for next 100 years also. Yes, maybe MUMT concept will come in, that is unmanned teaming will happen first. Completely unmanned, I don't think so we will be achieving that capability in near future.
So one of the other concepts, and you're a big proponent of this, is you've said that future wars will be won by those who complete the OODA loop the fastest. OODA is observe, orient, decide, and act. Can you just explain what this is?
Yeah, so there was a USAF Colonel John Boyd. So he put this into writing. Actually, it is a general knowledge type of observation. So he put it into writing. It basically talks about how fast you can take a decision. That is the meaning of this OODA loop. If you are able to decide quickly and act quickly, that means your decision cycle is very good and you are ready to take next decision. Because in operations, one decision, if it is successfully completed, it will lead to decision A. If it is not successfully completed, you have to do something else. Now, so enemy is also taking decision, you are also taking decision. You have to take decision faster than him. That is the basic principle of beating the OODA loop. Now, how do you beat it? You should have very good sensors. You should have decision support systems. So maybe AI based or big data based, that is where we are working. Then you should be able to quickly assess the damage which you have caused to get into this. So this is one thing, surveillance and big data systems, all this we are working on, and we are in the process of enhancing the decision-making cycle. Now it looks very simple when you're sitting in AC comfort, but in fog of war, where the number of variables known to you are actually, they are known to you in range, not in a definitive value. It becomes difficult. That is why training and enhancing your mental capability, exercising it in peacetime is important.
So in the context of Operation Sindoor, this OODA loop that you talk about, how do you see that having played out? The OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, and act in the context of Operation Sindoor.
Like I told you in the beginning, first is you have to surveil and you have to decide which target to hit and to engage. Thereafter, you have to pass that information to the execution agency. And then you have to see what has been the result. So this result, because you cannot go there physically, so either it comes to you through sensors or through satellite surveillance. So that is how you are able to do this. So we were able to achieve 8 to 10 hours cycle easily this time. We have to shorten it further.
You have to shorten the time cycle.
Yes.
So you said you've recorded, the damage caused, because that is the last one, orient, decide, and act. Can you tell us, like, in terms of damage left behind on the other side, what is your assessment? Is it 12 air bases? Is it?
So number of air bases is 11, that is known.
11 air bases.
Known. There is no. There is no confusion or there is no question about that. So, yeah, there are few radar, there are few surface-to-air missiles.
So where is the confusion then?
There is no confusion. I don't know where is the confusion.
Yeah, the confusion is in the extent of damage, not the number of places.
Yeah, extent of damage. You see, we were trying to. It was non-escalatory. It was proportionate response. It was not that. The way you see in some of the later conflicts. We were not trying to do that. So that is the thing.
So when the non-escalatory one, I believe the first press statement that was put out by the ADG PI also said that the actions taken on 7th, which was targeting these 9 terror bases, was non-escalatory. So is it the case that it's the enemy who escalated and India had to respond proportionately?
Yeah, it is for all of us to make out actually. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So now that this has laid the template, Air Marshal, one other thing that we saw, again, during the course of Operation Sindoor is a lot of Chinese weapon systems being used by Pakistan, whether it was the air defense systems, whether it is their missiles, and I believe some of their fighter jets were also deployed. And now China has publicly said that they're going to be supplying the 5th generation fighter jet, the J-35, to Pakistan in an expedited timeline. What does that mean for us? First, this whole Chinese weapon systems being used by the Pakistan Army, and second, the J-35 question.
So they are using the weapons, and they are weapon systems. We have to basically build our defenses and offenses against those kind of capabilities. As far as this 5th generation is concerned, we are aware of these news. We are following it closely. And our own modernization is on track. I have already spoken about AMCA. Recently, Honorable Raksha Mantri has already announced the execution model where private and private sector, public sector and private sector, both will compete and participate. We will be able to achieve the timelines the way they have been laid out. Also, we are getting into counter-stealth and anti-stealth technology, because that is how you counter stealth technology. We are also strengthening our surface-to-air capability, which is able to counter this. This is how we are doing this.
But for decades, all three forces have been preparing for what you call the two-front war. But now with this, as somebody said in the media, it's the Pakistan Army, but the weapons are all Chinese. It's no longer a two-front war. It's a fused front, if you will. How much of a concern is that?
So this was a known fact, and this contiguous threat was known beforehand. So all our plans are already made in such a manner that we cater for this. It is not a concern at this stage. Yes, now it has become known to public. It was known to us much before.
So it was a unknown known earlier. Now it's a known known.
Yes.
All right. So final word. If I were to ask you for, you've mentioned this earlier as well about the takeaways from Operation Sindoor. One is the indigenization of our weapon systems, the active entry of or arrival of drones as a line of attack. What would be the 2-3 big takeaways for you from these 4 days of Operation Sindoor? And I must add, Operation Sindoor is not concluded yet.
Yeah.
It's only been paused. But from those 4 days.
Non-linearity of response, simultaneity of response, and synchronization among all the agencies. This is what has been a great lesson and a success factor in this operation. Second is long-range vectors, longer and longer range vectors. For surveillance also and for action also. And third is training in joint environment, in integrated environment, and in environment where the fog of war is there. These are the some of the key takeaways. We have also launched a future warfare course putting this into account, and we are looking into all of this, and I think we are on correct path. And it will be a great success whenever we have to repeat this.
All right. We hope that we don't have to repeat it. But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Can we have a round of applause for Air Marshal Ashutosh Dikshit?
Thank you.
That was a great conversation. Air Marshal Dikshit, ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you, Zaka. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session, Forging India's Defense Independence, examines as to how India is strengthening strategic autonomy through systemic reforms in defense production and particularly procurement. India's defense exports have surged past 23,000 crores, while import dependence has dropped sharply. So leading this transformation is Shri Rajesh Kumar Singh, entrusted with steering Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense. So please join me in welcoming Defense Secretary Singh along with CNN News 18's Anand Narsimhan.
Namaste and Jai Hind, everyone. Namaste, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Let's dive straight into it. Every minute with Rajesh K. Singh ji is going to be important for us. And so let's start with Operation Sindoor, sir. We've got to start there and then we'll move forward.
Sure.
My first question to you, sir, and it's a little off the script. What happened on the 9th, sir? The 7th response, when was that decided? And then what happened on the 9th? Take us through that time.
Well, let me put it this way. After Pahalgaon, there was a meticulous planning of what targets we should hit. The intent this time was to go beyond the foot soldiers and hit the headquarters, particularly of these two outfits, the LET and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, at Muridke and Bahawalpur respectively. These outfits' relationship with terror in India goes back to 2611. They were also involved in the Parliament attack, and the idea was to send a clear message. And we felt that the message would only go if we hit the headquarters and not just, some of the camps. The planning, therefore, was focused on that. The intent was to hit only the terrorist outfits. 9 targets were hit, including these 2 main ones. Again, the intent was to convey to the Pakistanis that this is a non-escalatory, calibrated operation hitting only terrorists, and there was no intent ever to hit their military infrastructure or their civilian assets of any kind. That was conveyed or sought to be conveyed to them the next day. They did not respond to our calls at the DGMO level and decided to escalate. That escalation, as far as the escalation part is concerned, the services in an integrated manner under the CDS had drawn up a calibrated response of an escalation ladder, how they respond and where we go from there, idea being to maintain your escalation dominance. That process thereafter started. They responded. Our air defenses held very well. But because they kept escalating, we thereafter used some of our more potent weapons to hit their airfields. Thereafter, essentially, they came forward on the 9th, basically asking for a call with the DGMO, which they had earlier kind of refused even to take. And it was clear at that stage that they were in the process of capitulating, essentially. And this was in the morning of the 9th. So even before the announcement was made, we all knew that this was going to happen. This is what happened. The DGMO spoke and they essentially asked for a ceasefire. They said a few other things which I won't go into, but broadly that was the sequence of events.
But, sir, why Bahawalpur and Muridke? Because the report suggested that they had actually emptied out that place. Both these places were empty. So there was no cadre there to be hit. But why hit them? Why hit these markazes?
I think the hits at these 9 locations killed, according to our assessment, almost 100 terrorists and their followers. Whether some of the key people left is a different matter, but aside from the damage to the terrorists, who are also, in a way, the way Pakistan has shown that they are their assets as well, besides hitting them in terms of casualties, the intent was to demolish their headquarters. It was to send a message to these 2 outfits, who, as I said, have a long lineage in terms of terror activities in India.
You must have seen the pictures of the Fauj and the military also standing and the prayers being led by a known terrorist, a flagged terrorist, that entire funeral which happened. What's your impression when you saw that? How would you read those pictures?
So as I said just now, Anant, obviously these guys are their assets. They treat them as their assets and they mourn for them when they are hit. So it confirms and validates our assessment all along that these people are deliberately cultivated for cross-border terrorism in India as an instrument of trade policy. The difference is that under Prime Minister Modi, we've now decided that we will no longer allow them to necessarily only choose time and place. Yes, they will have the element of surprise always in terms of, hitting out, finding some innocent targets, soft targets, hit them. The intent is to, thereafter, they should know, one, that we will respond, but two, they should not know how we'll respond, the time and the place. And the nuclear umbrella is not going to deter us. There will be a policy of zero tolerance. The hits will be on the headquarters and on the leaders, not only on the foot soldiers. This is the new normal that I think Prime Minister Modi has made it very, very clear. And in future, therefore, the element of surprise will not be only with them, it will be with us also. We will sort of decide the script of what ensues thereafter once they try to, hit some soft targets in India. That expectation that the policy of forbearance that was practiced for decades, the new normal is that the forbearance is over. We will hit them hard at a time and place of our own choosing. And the level of escalation will be determined by our leadership. And it will definitely not be turning the other cheek.
What kind of response was enacted by the Pakistanis? Dushman se kya hai? What came? Because there were missiles that landed in Sirsa and some P-15s were noted. Was Delhi ever the target? What was their response? How would you read that response?
Yeah, so they used a mix of drones and loitering munitions and some missiles. Initial part on the first day when they used a lot of drones which seemed to be not to be armed, which perhaps they were looking to, do only surveillance, assess our air defenses. Over time, later in the night, there were some actual armed drones and explosive kamikaze drones, explosive dropping drones being used, and that caused a limited amount of damage in India. For the most part, our air defenses held very well because of its multi-layered nature, from the S-400s down to the Akash and to the Vishorads and the short-range missiles. So that multi-layered, overlapping air defense structure with many redundancies built into it held very well, I would say. And our population centers obviously were not affected at all. In Pakistan, the propaganda on that day, incidentally, was that the whole of northern India is in turmoil. And a lot of, missiles have gone. So it was very funny to me because obviously we were going about our normal business and there was no sense of panic anywhere. But yeah, that was it. Our air defenses held very well, and they held because there was a fusion of both indigenous technology and, and some strong assets and weapons that we had taken from foreign sources as well.
So did they fire ballistic missiles, and was Delhi the target, sir? Was Delhi ever on their mark?
I'm not very sure about that. They did fire at least one, but that was taken down near Sirsa, and thereafter, I don't think they probably were. They may have fired other ballistic missiles, but I don't see any reason or have not seen anything to believe that Delhi necessarily was being targeted.
What was the thought behind Bharat's response? After the 8th, if I could ask you, on the intervening night of 8th and 9th, why were 11 air bases targeted? And that was a steep climb up the escalation ladder. So what brought that about?
That brought it about because, as I mentioned, that it had been made clear to them that we are not hitting your military targets or anything else. Our action was confined, calibrated, and limited to the terrorist headquarters and terrorist infrastructure alone. Despite that, they decided to act as if these people were their own assets. They escalated using initially different types of drones and gradually built it up to armed drones and explosives dropping drones. Thereafter, in that night, it was decided that we need to go up to the next step. That step was targeting their airfields, as Air Marshal Dixit just mentioned. And I think that the fact that our long-range weapons, the BrahMos in particular, got through, hit some of their most strategic air bases very, very effectively, that probably brought it home to them that this is going south for them, and they decided to essentially capitulate and seek a ceasefire.
But it was not 1 or 2 airfields. Sudhir ji is also here. We're talking about BrahMos, but 11 airfields.
Yeah.
That's a steep, calibration in terms of escalation and saying really getting into their skin or under their skin. What was the thought process behind that? There could have been a response of decimating 2 or 3 airfields, but 11 at the same time.
I think the intent was to go all out once they, kept escalating, despite our warning that we are being calibrated, strategic, confining ourselves. The intent was on that night to go a little all out and make it clear to them that, you will suffer much greater consequences if you sort of keep moving up the escalation ladder from your side. Our escalation ladder had certain responses built in. This was the next step.
The Noor Khan strike, was there a specific reason why Noor Khan? Because that sent the general into the bunker. He's now field marshal, but he was hiding in a bunker. Yeah.
I think targeting is not something that I would necessarily be involved in, so I wouldn't be able to mention that in great detail. Maybe Marshal Dikshit would have been the better person to respond on that. But it is one of their most important bases. I understand their VIP squadron is based there, and there are other strategic assets there. The hit there probably made it very clear to them that there was no way they could sustain this kind of a conflict, particularly given the effectiveness of our long-range missiles.
As per you, the Pakistanis have made a lot of claims. They claim that they have downed 5 of our aircraft. They've really decimated a lot of our military infrastructure. Is there any credence to that?
Obviously, there isn't. I mean, their claims about destroying an S-400, all that has been proven incorrect with visual evidence for all to see. I would say I'm not going to get into details of how many assets they lost or we lost, but I would say that in terms of the combination of military casualties and military assets, their losses are manifold compared to our losses. Manifold, I mean several times more. If you add to them the terrorists, over 100 killed, who are also, as I said, their assets, the number obviously is several times whatever minor losses we suffered.
So there is an estimate and some claims that nearly 20% of Pakistan's military infrastructure has been decimated. And it's a severe lesson in terms of nuclear deterrence also, that ball or that bogey that they've been flouting. Yeah. Your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think there is it's clear that conventional deterrence can be practiced even in the context of two nuclear powers. There is always a little bit of uncertainty about something unthinkable happening, but I think it's been established that you can practice some level of conventional deterrence even under a nuclear umbrella, and people's bluff can be called when it comes to some of these, the saber rattling that they used to do earlier.
The truce, the ceasefire or the pause, the call from the Pakistanis. Donald Trump made a lot of claims, talked about a trade deal, intervention. There's talk that some of the Middle Eastern nations were also talking. Your thoughts? Was there pressure?
I mean, this is something that perhaps the MEA would be in a better position to answer, but I do want to emphasize what has always been said, that this was a bilateral sort of agreement. If you see the sequence, I mentioned the fact that this came about, request for a talk came in the morning. We knew at that stage already that they were about to capitulate. So, yeah, I mean, from that sequence, it should be very clear that it is bilateral. The fact that a lot of friends and well-wishers would also be talking to both sides is not a secret. I mean, that would have also been happening.
The Pakistanis, have they learned a lesson, or are they going to recalibrate and again try something in the near future? Your assessment?
I mean, their intent, we can only assess their actions. So we'll wait and see. I mean, I think deterrence works with them for a certain amount of time. Thereafter, they often go for a further provocation. I wouldn't rule out anything. End of the day, it's a state where the old cliche goes that it's an army with a state. And it's true, they've captured the state apparatus. They've captured the state's resources as well. They are, as I mentioned in another interview, this gentleman, the field marshal, sits on an investment facilitation cell there, deciding where resources should go and what should be done. I mean, he's essentially deciding economic and financial public policy as well. So yeah, it's a very different kind of a state, and obviously they are therefore able to divert resources from their economy, which has gone through, I think, if my memory is correct, they've gone through 24 IMF bailout packages. Their GDP is about 1/10 of ours. And right now, I would, the last I saw the data, 2 of our Indian states, Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra, have higher state domestic products than Pakistan. 3 others, Karnataka, UP, and 1 other state, Karnataka, UP, and Gujarat, I think. 3 others are going to sort of get ahead of Pakistan in GDP terms by the end of this year. So obviously, the ability of this army to garner resources, divert it for the military, while keeping its population without social and economic security, that is the real challenge there. And it's important to expose this, because that is why they've, as a country, they've even gone behind Bangladesh when it comes to per capita GDP and in terms of economic and social indicators.
Taking the conversation forward, what, according to you, are the 3 or 4 big learnings from this 90-hour conflict? And was there a moment where we also had to recalibrate as a nation in our response? Did we underestimate, overestimate somewhere?
Yeah, so in terms of lessons, obviously it's very clear the primacy of air power and the need to increasingly the recourse to long-range weapons, weapons that are to be fired from a standoff distance, away from increasing use of unmanned systems. Those lessons have already come out from the Middle East and the Ukraine conflicts. It was brought home to us more clearly during this conflict. There was quite a lot of use of drones and loitering munitions, kamikaze drones on both sides. And the lessons that we've learned is that we need to double down on our indigenization efforts to ensure that we build a large, effective military drone manufacturing ecosystem. Right now, most of our drone manufacturing is in the civilian space. We need to harden those drones, enable them to work in environments where electronic warfare or GPS denial exists, and that hardening and work will have to be done. Industry understands. That is also why we enabled our defense forces right after Operation Sindoor with emergency powers. Up to 15% of their capital budget they can directly take from any source, including global sources. The intent is to quickly replenish whatever gaps were noticed during this period. Also, give visibility to the industry in terms of orders. And as a result, you will find that many drone companies are now getting into this military drone space, including those who are doing design and development themselves, one of whom has just managed to get a fairly large funding, I assume as part of the overall visibility that people have, that a lot of military orders will come, but also other large defense companies who've tied up with, in terms of technology, with European and American firms. So this military drone ecosystem was a little small in this country. There is a recognition that it needs to be built up, and we will support it. End of the day, we can only support it through orders, and that those orders will, as I said in a address to the CIA earlier, there will be no shortage of orders as long as you meet our services requirements.
How big is this gap, sir, in terms of meeting the services requirement and also the local indigenous production of military equipment? How big is this gap?
Yeah. So I would say that there are certain areas where we've achieved some level of independence when it comes to artillery, when it comes to long-range missiles, when it comes to different types of armored land systems. All of these, maybe a lot of small arms also. I think we've reached a stage where DRDO design hived off to both public and private sector. They are getting most of the orders now. I'm talking about orders like the ATAX, which was ordered earlier, and a fairly large order for close quarter carbine, a 4.5 lakh this unit order has also been finalized. That will again be Indian design and Indian manufacturing. Ships, already we are self-sufficient. We are building 60 ships. Out of that, those 59 are being built in Indian shipyards. A few of them with foreign designs, but most with Indian designs. So we've made progress in these areas that I mentioned. There are other areas where the technology from the DRDO may not quite be there. And those are the areas where we'll have to adopt technology from other sources, do technology transfers, localize, but ultimately build in India. I mean, the intent is that this is a market which is a single buyer market. On the demand side, Government of India will ensure that, as we've already announced, our budget, 75% of our budget will be spent within the country, only 25% outside. That, combined with further improvements in our licensing regime on the supply side to improve ease of doing business so that manufacturing capacity, surge capacity expands in this country. Those two, we will operate on those two areas to ensure that we gradually build up a much larger, more diversified industrial base in this country, comprising of strong public and strong private sector companies.
Should we say that there is increased defense expenditure in terms of budgetary allocation? Because as of now, it's just around 2.2% of the GDP, and also our defense expenditure is less than the imports from China. So that's the number. Large amount of the defense expenditure is not towards procurement. So is there a thought process there?
Yes. So right now we are at actually 1.9% of GDP, and out of that about 27% actually goes into modernization budget, which is the capital equipment budget, which actually meets your capability gaps. The challenge has been, frankly, that our ability to spend that money, the absorptive capacity within industry, both global and within the country, has been low. There are two aspects to it. One is that we've not been placing enough orders, not signing enough contracts quickly enough. We've been too slow in procurement. It's an old story, which we are now trying to sort of really change. The other is that there are supply chain bottlenecks, as a result of which, within your country, HAL suffers because engines are not coming, or there are geopolitical conflicts which lead to delays in delivery from some of our strategic allies like Russia and Israel, both of whom happen to be going through a conflict period. So the only way to sort of meet that is to ensure that give complete visibility to industry in terms of orders, sign maximum contracts, ensure better management of those contracts, and based on that you can then try to sort of ensure that the pipeline of what is required by the armed forces becomes stronger. Those steps are now being taken. I've mentioned it before that last year we signed contracts of 2 lakh crores. That was twice the highest we've ever signed in our history. This year we will sustain that speed, and therefore, as I promised to the CII Business Council, we will give enough orders to industry. The industry has to come forward to meet our needs by investing in R&D one and in capital equipment on the other. Meaning that if an industrial house doesn't have an engineering department and doesn't have capital equipment and is essentially trying to do assembly with, just pure assembly with screwdriver technology type of thing, this is not what we have in mind. We want integrated, deep localization within the country. And my assessment is that is already happening. We have 16,000 MSMEs in this country now who are working as vendors and sub-vendors to our major OEM manufacturers, including the 16 PSUs and the 400-odd licensed manufacturers, some of which are fairly large. So yes, that the industry is at a very important tipping point in terms of really becoming a large, having a large share in our overall manufacturing ecosystem. And the government intends to, as I said, support it both on the demand side through order visibility and on the supply side through improving ease of doing business, easing licensing requirements, perhaps even providing deemed licensing beyond a certain time limit to ensure that it becomes easier to do business in India if you're an arms manufacturer.
So my final question, because it's the last minute, we are surrounded, or Bharat as a challenge is undefined borders, exposed because of the sea. There is the Islamist threat, there is the expansionist threat, there is the secessionist threat, multiple. When are we going to have an integrated defense system that protects us from all sides? How far are we from achieving that?
I think, you pointed out the challenges, but one should also look at our strengths. We do have a very large, very strong, very capable armed forces. We have, as a country, we have tremendous resilience and strength in our democratic structure, in our talented population. These challenges are there because of our nature of our geography, where we seem to be surrounded by one or two adversaries. But because of the strength inherent in this country and its growing economic strength in terms of the world's fourth largest economy, moving on to become the third largest very soon. You mentioned that we are doing only 2% of our GDP, but 2% of $4 trillion is not a small sum. It is much more than, say, 2.5% about 20 years back of a 1 trillion economy. So we've been expanding, but as I said, these challenges that you mentioned, we will meet by ensuring that the capability gaps that we identify get filled quickly by much faster, more agile policies, particularly on the procurement side. And that you will see the results of that during the course of this year. We are working on really revamping our entire procurement cycle, rewriting the DAP 2020, and end of the day, ensuring a level playing field where the private sector and the public sector come together to meet our defense needs for our services.
Any timeline for this, or do you see a goal where we'll be truly Atmanirbhar, not dependent on foreign technology, foreign equipment, machinery, for our own security needs, defense needs?
So I mentioned that there are some segments where we are already Atmanirbhar. There are others where we have to focus on, and in the air domain there are critical gaps, particularly in engine technologies, for which we probably will have to think about a national mission. That's a fairly yawning gap which we need to fill. There are others which we can fill by recourse to a combination of our own designs and manufacturing, the way we are doing AMCA on our own, a fifth-generation aircraft to be designed and built in India, hopefully with a combination of public and private sector talent. In the short run, you will have to rely on technology transfers. Main point I would like to make clear is that India has decided that we'll spend our money within this country. So whether it is Indian design and Indian manufacture, or whether it is technology transfer and thereafter Indian manufacturer, the bulk of any platform that we take, any large acquisition that we do, will have to be made within the country. That much is very clear, and therefore industry can rest assured that if you are in this business and if you are willing to put in your heart and soul into a combination of both R&D and sufficient focus on capital equipment to meet the requirements of that industry, there will be no shortage of orders.
So defense is good business. Make in India and indigenous tech, indigenous equipment, that's the direction that we're taking. To all our viewers here at the CNN News 18 Town Hall Defense Edition, Rajesh K. Singh. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for that very enriching conversation, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you heard that term, Atmanirbhar. Ladies and gentlemen, Defense Secretary Singh. So I was saying you heard that term Atmanirbhar a lot in this conversation. So let's further explore what it truly means to be Atmanirbhar in the defense technology. So from AI to directed energy weapons, India's research engine is shifting gears. We now boast of advanced indigenous systems, passive stealth radars, solid-state laser DEWs, and the Kali electron accelerator laying the foundation for quantum and microwave defense capabilities. So joining us is Dr. B.K. Das, Director General Electronics and Communication Systems, DRDO, a key figure in India's indigenous tech drive. And moderating this conversation is Zaka Jacob.
Dr. Das, thank you very much for speaking with us here on CNN-News18 Townhall, the Defense Edition. The previous two speakers did mention a lot about indigenous technologies, and DRDO has played a stellar role in development of some of those indigenous technologies, including some that came to good use during Operation Sindoor. So everybody wants to know about BrahMos and about Akash. So please tell us your contribution in both of those weapon systems, because it's clear for everyone who are closely following Operation Sindoor how good and how effective these weapon systems were during those 88 hours.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, if we talk about Operation Sindoor, I think these two missiles which you talk about, I have been from missile program and 33 years in ITR, where I think every bit of it has been tested and evaluated. So if I talk about the first one, Akash, actually that is where we started as a part of integrated guided missile development program, thanks to Dr. Kalam and the entire team. So we started it, our first learning has happened from Trishul and concurrently with Akash as a surface to air, wherein the first time, how do you guide the missiles towards the target, and target comes at a tremendous speed, and you need to have a Azil radar which should be able to capture the target, and you should have a data link where you have to upload the data to the missile, command the missiles, seeker comes in after the latter stage. So, I mean, each one of them was a huge technology by itself, and India definitely were quite new to most of them those days. I'm talking about 20, 30 years when we were at our youth. Yes, a lot of learning has happened, a lot of struggle has happened through which we have learned the key stories of the missiles. Yes, we have tested, we have evaluated, and a number of iterations have happened. With Rajendra radar, I think all of you know that time, then we converted to 3D center acquisition radar, then battery surveillance systems, BCC, all those concepts before we have jumped into ballistic missile defense program. This has been the first low-level ballistic missile defense, it's a air defense systems we developed. And a number of tests has been done, and quite a bit of a accuracy it has come in, thanks to the software, thanks to radar, missiles, propulsions, guidance, data links. I think all of them matured.
Dr. Das, you mentioned precision guided, and I think that was one of the standout features in the weapon systems used, that there were minimal civilian casualties on the enemy side. And that's not an easy thing to achieve, because a large number of these places, there was reference to Bahawalpur and Muridke a moment ago. These are very densely populated, civilian areas. Also, sometimes the enemy sort of intersperses civilians to try and get some kind of a shield, a human shield. How was this brought about, the precision-guided nature of some of these long-range and medium-range weapons?
See, I'll tell you. I think if India you look at, I think our control, guidance, and precision, I think we are the best. We have developed lots of control algorithms. Over the period of the years, we have validated them. Our software is one of the strength. Our guidance algorithm is probably one of the best. And the whole idea is the precision. See, one of them we have demonstrated, if you remember, when we had that Operation Shakti, the SAT program. See, all these missiles you talk about, as it goes close to the target, you have the seeker in and then it starts blasting. And when you have that minimum distance, then the RPF works, LPF works, it does its done. But when we talk about the deep space activity of intercepting a satellite, it's an absolute kinetic bullseye hit. And imagine 600 kilometers away in the space, our own satellite comes in, it's like a speck of dust. And with that, our missile going through, and there is no RPF works there, it is a missile which has to fine precision guided to pierce through the solar panel of the satellite. You can imagine what's the kind of a precision India has.
So, notably one of the things, again, the previous speakers alluded to this, was about drone technology, and, that was very visible during Operation Sindoor, and also counter-drone technology. So the DRDO has developed this D4 anti-drone technology. We saw the impact of it during Operation Sindoor. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I tell you, contrast to what I explained for the other missiles, D4 system has been one of the quickest which DRDO could do. I think the entire conceptualization to deployment has happened in exactly 24 months. It's a record by itself. So it comprises, as you know, I think now people are familiar with it. You have to gather the drone, you have to identify the drone with IFF, whether it is a friend or a foe, and then you have to jam it through your high-power jamming. That's why we call it as a soft kill with a white beam, and if it can deter that, or if it is autonomous, or if you've got anti-jam, then probably we need to kill it. And the killing has happened through the laser. Now laser is going to be the next generation weapon systems which you are working, and few things have been told by the compare that time itself, maybe during the course of discussion I'll explain further. But all this trio, all the three things of acquisition by a radar from a deep, then targeting through the high-powered jammers to jam it, and failing with killing it through the narrow beam fine pointing laser. These three precision technologies has been mastered, of course designed by DRDO, handed over to a number of industries, and one such industry has got the production order, 23 numbers, and most of them are deployed, and you have seen the result.
So you mentioned laser-based weapon systems. So I believe there was a recent test of a 30 kilowatt directed energy weapon that's capable of neutralizing drones, missiles, and small projectiles, again, developed indigenously by DRDO. What can you tell us about this?
Let me tell you, the future of warfare is going to be directed energy weapon, because definitely anti-missile programs are there, ballistic missile defense is there, you know, we have got Akash, we have got S-400, all of them. But end of the day, if you see, to kill a missile, we lose a missile as well. So when this extended year of warfare continues, I think it finally reflects back to warfare of economy. If we keep losing missiles by protecting us to counter missiles, at some stage of a time, whether the economy permits us. So the whole look across the world is going to be directed energy, whether it is laser or it is microwave. So the one you're talking about is the laser. That's the 30 kilowatt. The one I explained to you on D4 is a 2 kilowatt. 2 kilowatt is for 1 kilometer. It is good enough for neutralize a drone. But as we enhance the power, the range increases. And the range increases, you have a time to negotiate. When you have a time to negotiate, I think you win the war. So 30 kilowatt happens to be one such systems where we have extended the range. But having done so, the challenges are many, because the sources becomes bigger, thermal management becomes challenging, multi-beam focusing on the single point object becomes equally challenging, fine pointing, accuracy, stabilizations becomes more challenging. But you'll be very happy to know India happens to be one of those top 3-4 countries who could realize, develop, demonstrate, and we could kill multiple of them, swarm of drones together with the 30 kilowatt weapon.
So we've been talking about the future of warfare. We saw glimpses of that during Operation Sindoor. We have seen glimpses of that both during the Russia-Ukraine conflict and more recently the Israel-Iran conflict. What about AI-driven systems, photonics, quantum and directed energy weapons? How are these going to change the future of warfare?
Yeah, let me
How
tell
is
you.
DRDO getting ready for it?
True. Actually, I'll tell you, DRDO is going for a metamorphosis. It's DRDO 2.0. Today, all along the DRDO has been, we develop technology, we realize it as a system, we make a transfer of technology, we hand over to a number of industries, public, private, all of them, we teach them the trick of the trade, and then they start making the production scale of the capability. That all DRDO has been all along. But today, we are venturing into a different DRDO altogether. See, if we want to win the war, it's going to be the war of technology. It's technology which is going to reign the world today. And if we have to do that, we have to work on a technology which will be a weapon in next decades, not today. So all that jargons which you spoke just now about, none of them as a weapon exists today. But who is going to work for it? It's going to be DRDO. And how DRDO will work if DRDO will still be busy with the conventional weapon systems? So that's the reason, thanks to the industries, they have all come up in a big way today. And we are handing over most of our current responsibility to the industries to scale up and surge their capabilities and do the hand-holding through RDR. We have got our systems to have a back-end support. To 10 to 20% hand-holding we do, and they march forward. The idea of doing that is to make our brain free. And they are the people who are endorsed today. Whether you talk about photonics, you'll be very happy to know we have developed the first photonics radar thanks to DRDO and Institute of Science. We are working on laser power systems, quantum systems, so on and so forth.
Secretary recently talked about, there is still a yawning gap. That's the phrase that he used in certain technologies when it comes to air power and so on. Again, the criticism for DRDO has been that, either the high quality caliber of the research is not keeping up with modern day warfare, or more, more presciently, I think it would also be about the delays in some of these projects. So how do you sort of respond to that?
Yeah, my critics are my friends. I think that's how we got to know where we lack at. And interestingly, this particular case, we knew where we're lacking. It's not the issue of talent not being there in DRDO or the quality of research being down. Yes, delay I understand, but when it comes to the delay, actually delay has got multi reasons. First is we over-speculate, thinking that probably we can realize things much faster. And when we go deep down the dive, we understand the depth of it, and then we start realizing systems. If you look at any of the systems today, if you look at F-22, the Raft, it has taken 25 years. So, but we somehow overestimated ourselves to make a fighter aircraft in 5 years or 10 years. So that has taken certain times to do it forward. Having said so, today the approach has changed. See, technology and systems cannot be taken together. That is where the uncertainties becomes multifold and the tall claim gets vanished. So what we need to do is we have to have a staggered way. We should have the systems from the mature technology which is already available. Now DRDO has taken up a program. Out of all mature technology, how many versatile weapons we can deliver in next 6 months to be prepared for the future Sindurs. At the same time, culture those technologies like photonics, quantum, cognitive systems and all that so on and so forth with AI, ML, intervention, generative AI, all that. They will not be visible to you today because those are the deep space research which you are working today. But definitely if those ingredients becomes ready, creating a pizza becomes easy.
All right. Final word. A lot of talk, in the previous sessions also about Atmanirbharta and whether, Indian industry can fill the gap that are there in these critical technologies. What has your experience been? Because you share technologies with a lot of private companies as well. Are they ready to scale in the level that the services need?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. See, suddenly the generation has changed. The expectations has changed from Indian industries. Their hope, their aspire has also gone sky high. So, but the point is the bandwidth. The point is today the demand is high, but the supply has to match. So suddenly they can't scale up their bandwidth, suddenly they can scale up their production facilities. It takes time. But you'll be very happy to know the industries have come up in a big, big way. That's number one. And number two is we are never restricting it to 1 or 2 industries. Like I told you, the D4 system has been spread across 7 to 8 industries and many more are asking me for. And all of them have started developing systems. And I'm happy to say that Indian Armed Forces are not now getting it as a single tender from a single industry. It is all spreading across forward. And more than that, we are now having a shared vision with the industries. Now industries and DRDO together we are working on a DCPP model. It's called Development Cum Production Partner. So they are our design partner from the inception of it. So the moment they are with us, they understand what is the scaling required. So by the time the product is ready, it goes for production. It takes minimum at least 5 to 6 years. And by then their production potential within the industry also becomes ready. So that matching happens quickly. And when the actual production order comes in, I think their delivery matches to what the requirement is about.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a round of applause for Dr. B.K. Das, Director General ECS of the DRDO.
Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for Dr. Das. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Infrastructure is a weapon. And nowhere is that more visible than at India's borders. Our next conversation focuses on keeping India's borders resilient, not just through deterrence, but through robust infrastructure. With us today is Lieutenant General Raghu Srinivasan, Director, General Border Roads Organization. He's the man who's responsible for turning terrain into tactical advantage. And he is in conversation with CNN-News18 Sanand Narsimhan. Welcome, sir.
Namaste and Jai Hind again. And this is a conversation that is often not conducted, Infrastructure. I can go and fight only if I can get there. Sir, in 2012, I will start with a personal, experience, General Srinivasan. I've had the fortune to go up to Bumla in Arunachal. But the roads were horrid. And when we get there, and it was all cobalt, nice, cobbled roads, fantastic roads on the other side, Chinese bunker in occupied territory, all of that. And when I asked the Fauji there, the colonel there who was there, and the senior person, so why are our roads like this? So the philosophy is that यहाँ सड़कें खराब होंगी तो दुश्मन को आने में तकलीफ होगी. So has that philosophy changed now? Let me start from there. Has that thought process changed?
So the interesting and humorous aside, definitely. I mean, I would say that in the last 10 years, we have looked upon the borders as strategic sovereignty. You need to get there, you need to populate that area, that place should be economically viable, and your flag should fly over there. To do that, you need the road. And like you're saying, we have reached every part of the border, and we've done this in the last 10 years. And the surge is tremendous. The point is that many times I am asked that you compare yourself to China, our northern adversary, and look at what you are doing over here. But I would like to say, taking off from where your question led, that if you begin a little late, you're playing a little catch-up. And when you play catch-up, you need to accelerate, you need to surge if you want to get there. And I think all the ingredients of surge are very much there. There is government policy, there is the industry support, there is the technological support, there is the services, that is both the Army and the Air Force, which essentially look upon these areas. They are looking upon these much more differently. And lastly, the states, which are the border states, are contributing immensely. They see this as a huge opportunity. We were talking about migration. I mean, there was a time, at least even in important states like Uttarakhand. I'm sure you've all gone to Joshimath, and ahead of Joshimath, there's this village called Mana, and you go up ahead. Mana, Harsil, Joshimath, everything over there. Traditionally, everyone used to come down in winter, and traditionally everyone sought employment in Dehradun. On the other hand, you see something in the Spiti Valley. Most of you might have traveled in the Rohtang tunnel. What used to happen was that everyone, once the winters would set in, and this we are talking about 6 months in the year, they would come back to the hinterland, and then they would go back, and whatever was across the pass was essentially in nomadic terms. Now they're developing infrastructure, we're having homestays, we're having hospitals, we're having schools, all the ingredients, all the social matrices and the indices. So as far as we are concerned, that is the border roads, we are not a gun versus butter debate. We are both guns and butter.
Both guns and the butter. Arunachal, can we address that? Because there are villages right at the corner, right at the border, where there are reports that the Chinese have infrastructure and they are occupying, and they're, there's salami slicing, and the locals are saying there's no connectivity. We can't live there because the roads are not built. So compared to 2014 and now 2025, how much of ground have we covered, and how far are we from achieving perhaps what is the actual goal, where every single village, the first village to the last village, Kibitu to Kutch, we have connectivity?
Yes, I think you covered it very well. I said that when we had a surge, and if we take the baseline as 10, 12 years ago, we take that baseline, from there we've gone much further. And the government has taken out the orders for the Arunachal Frontier Highway, which is approximately 1,300 kilometers long, of which the border roads is doing about 550 kilometers in the central section. And this starts from the west, that is the general area of Tawang, and goes all the way to the east in the general area of Vijayanagar. And if you look at the concept, or if you have the border to the north, and you have what is your lateral, remember that all axials leading to the border must flow from a lateral. So what is your lateral? Your lateral presently was about 150 kilometers behind. And that was a robust lateral which would go on the places that you're talking about, Kibitu, and then it would come over here. So you could say the areas of north of the Brahmaputra, the lateral would be going across. Now your lateral is going to be about 40 kilometers from the LAC. And that would be enough for us, switching that they are able to do. And we have these laterals, and this is the thought process everywhere along the border, that you have a robust, strong all-weather lateral which you have, from which you can move axials going out towards the border.
When we have something like Galwan and LAC, the forge is moving into places which have never been occupied before and also reaching up to heights. And this is moving heavy equipment and it's huge tonnage and also numbers. How much time do you have? How much time does the BRO have? What are your turnaround times? And, if you can share with us, even with Operation Sindoor, I'm sure.
So I think there we are, there I don't think we come in as an immediate response. I mean, if you're expecting roads to be constructed to areas where you need to go in the timelines which, let's say, the 88 hours that we had in Sindur, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen anywhere in the world. But what will happen is that any bridge which gets taken out, any connectivity which gets blocked, any tunnel which gets damaged, there we have the capability to respond to see that the existing lines of communication we will maintain, and that's our job. And we have seamless plans with the army. We practice this. In a warlike situation, we come directly under command, and resources are pre-positioned, they're in place, they're able to take it on. Now, you very interestingly brought out Galwan. I think Galwan was an actual test bed case that our infrastructure, that is the road connectivity and what we had built over there through the army, was better than that was with it. Why do you think they went back? I mean, they foraged. I would imagine, I mean, I don't have the exact, they foraged to see what was happening. They tried to set us back. We gave them a tight slap and they got back. And what has happened since? Has anything else happened over there? So I would imagine they are very worried that what was not happening, you're making signatures of border infrastructure at every point on the line of actual control. Whether you start from eastern Ladakh, whether you start from Daulat Beg Goldi in the north, and you go all along, whether it is Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, every part of the border, you are making signatures of strong infrastructure being developed over there. And I would imagine that would set off a little bit of alarm bells.
So when you have strong infrastructure, let's say you have roads, does that also mean, you talked about the butter part, how important is it that there is local population that stays there? There are people who don't migrate out of that area. Does that play a role in the Dushman not slicing off land, territory, making forays and forages, etc.?
See, that's the brilliance of Bharat. We don't need Potemkin villages. We don't need to pick up people from the hinterland and say that, okay, you populate our borders. Our people populate the borders immediately. By the time we build the road, there's a tea shop. By the time the next season you've come over there, the tea shop has become a cafe. We see homestays. And I have to give credit to our bikers. I think they're all, many of them must be here, who buy this Himalayan motorcycle. Yes, I see a hand over there. And who, these intrepid travelers are traveling all along our road. I get phone calls from the highest motorable pass in the world, Umlingla, 19,100 feet. I get a guy who phones and says, sir, I'm very happy to be here, see my photograph, and thanks for a great road which is over there. I want to tell him, buddy, I mean, you're in 19,100 feet, not so much action. So this is our, intrepid Indian entrepreneurship just needs the road. And afterwards they take care of it. Everything happens. And I must say that the chief ministers and the state administration of all the border states, they are very well in sync. We had a meeting yesterday at the MORTH where we were discussing the construction of a tunnel in Sikkim, and we had, I'm sorry, in Ladakh, and we had the Chief Secretary of Ladakh online, and he said, I am in sync with the Army's strategic requirement because we are going to use the same strategic requirement to get our tourists over there. And it means a lot to our economy. And for border states, once these roads come up, and it's already happening, I don't think we will see any tourism outside the country because we have such beautiful areas in our own country. It's all going to stay here.
General Sahab, we've got some pictures and I'd request you to talk us through it. Can we have about 5 or 6 pictures? Okay, this is the first one. This is the surf works on the Kaing Tato Road.
Yeah, this is in Arunachal Pradesh. It's a portion which used to be called rest of Arunachal Pradesh, but because it was so remote in the good old days.
So I just wanted to use these pictures as a reference and say, is working with the different line ministries and departments like this or like this currently?
No, I think...
and state governments like you're talking.
I think both slides say the same thing. Initially it's like this, and then it becomes like this.
Okay, let's look at the next picture. Let's look at the next picture. Okay, this is again the Nimu Padam Darcha Road.
Yeah.
So this is again, this is how it looked, and after the BRO's gotten involved, this is how it
No,
looked.
I think the BRO got involved both. Initially it looked like this.
Yeah.
So what you had was a mountain.
Okay.
And then you cut it. And of course we didn't allow anyone to get on this, because then you would have someone like you saying, oh, look at that road, that's not so good. So, but that's how the road looks when it is immediately cut from the mountain. And then it takes one season to put the blacktop, and then we get it all. We got to get the bride looking good, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we do.
So that Bumla story, I'll tell you, Niche cantonment, they used to say, khana lane ke liye pura din lagta hai. So that's what they used to say at that time. Now, I hope that's also changed now. This is the Arunachal Frontier Highway, NH 913.
That's
You're
right.
talking about this.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So this is also currently...
Yes, so essentially what, I mean, I need to say this, that in our borders, we are dealing with Himalayan geology, which is fragile. Secondly, we are dealing with a huge amount of moisture. That is, whether it is in rain or whether it is in snow. The third is where we have a very small working season. That means whether it is the north because of the snow, we are not able to work from October to April. If it is the east because of the rain, we stop work around May, June, and then again we can get out only in October. So your working window at best is going to be about 8 months to about 6 months. So this means that, okay, how long does it take for a project? 4 years. But how much time did you actually get in the project? You actually got 2 years. And that time is, you got to pull back, you've got to protect, you again have to go back through long lines of communication, you've got to get there. And then the kind of fragile geology that we face in the Himalayas is again something which we need to deal with, but we're getting better.
This is a bridge at 14,900 feet.
Yes, this is on the Shok River.
Sasser-Brangsa Bridge.
Yes, this is on the Shok River on eastern Ladakh. They've used micropiles to get into the ground because it's permafrost, and it's not easy to get our piers getting into the ground. It's a brilliant bridge, which is the piers have been made when we could, because you have a very small window before the ground becomes too hard for you to get inside, or it becomes waterlogged. So that bridge is across the Shok River.
And it can carry the weight. Now, this is another one. This is the first blast that was initiated by the Prime Minister on 25th anniversary of Kargil Divas on 26 July 2024. Now, this line, this one, the Shinkunla Tunnel, this is also very critical.
So I'm trying to advertise Shinkunla because I see a lot of bikers over here. This is along the Zanskar River. This is one of the most beautiful places in the world. All you have to do is turn left from Manali, which is actually west. You go up from Jispa, cross over to Darcha, and then you cross over the Shinkunla Pass. This is brilliant, really, because getting into Leh always meant crossing 1 or 2 passes on the Himalayas. Now, we all know that getting to Leh from Srinagar meant you cross the Zojila Pass, where we are getting a tunnel. Getting to Leh from the Manali axis meant you cross 3 passes, Lachulungla, Baralachla, and Taglangla. Here you cross just 1 pass, which is the Shinkunla Pass, where we are going to have the tunnel. You enter the valley of Padam, and you enter the Zanskar, and then you drive along the Zanskar, which is actually the Nirak chilling areas where they have the Chadar trek, where people walk across the ice and something over there.
Those on the other side of the LAC won't be very happy about this.
I don't think we asked them whether they are happy. We do what we need to do.
Yeah, but it's better. Along with the bikers, a lot more will move much faster in that region, and it is strategically very important. The last picture, sir, this is the other one, which is at about 13,900 feet. The Alt Tunnel. Can we have the last picture? Yeah, this is at the Mudnyoma airfield. Sorry. So this is at 13,700 feet. You want to talk us through this? Why so important?
I'm not going to say anything. There's an Air Force officer, very senior Air Force officer who was over here. What I would say is that you need to have strategic infrastructure which we develop for all these services.
The timeline is October 2025.
That's right. That's right. We'll do. And I'm really very proud about this because we have got a lady officer over here, Colonel Poonam Doming. and another group of lady officers under her. They they winter throughout the year, making this in extremely difficult conditions. So we have absolutely. We have absolutely super performance in executive assignments. We're not talking about administrative assignments. We're talking about executive assignments, actually doing the work on ground.
So is that psychological shift happened कि दुश्मन घुस जाएगा to telling the दुश्मन कि हम घुस जाएंगे?
I think it's there everywhere. I mean, look at your response in every crisis which has been developed. I mean, it's easy to say, but aggression needs to be inculcated. Your first response is to fly, to back off. To become aggressive, you have to decide that now and no more. This much, no more, no further. And you've got to decide that you're going to fight, and you're going to fight hard. I think this message has been sent time and time again. And I mean, the Border Roads is one organization where we are reflective of the government intent. If you have intention and you say that I'm going to reach the border and this is what I'm actually going to build there, and I'm going to protect it, and I'm going to use it, now what do? The card has been played and it's your turn, sir.
Thank you very much, General Srinivasan. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General Raghu Srinivasan for everyone. All right, so let me go back to this term, Atmanirbhar. We have been talking about that a lot lately, and that means that when it is about our defense system, there is a lot of it that gets produced here. And that is why this next session talks about how much of that really goes out, how much is India really exporting, and how dominant is India's role in the defense exports. And let's talk about that further. Can India really become that global hub when it is about those exports in the defense sector? So from Make in India, we are now segging into exports from India, and this particular session asks that very bold question: can Indian defense exports really lead the global south? CNN News 18's Rahul Shivshankar finds answers to those very questions with Lieutenant General Vinod Khandare, who's a former principal advisor to Ministry of Defense, and Dr. Sudhir Mishra, former DG DRDO. Welcome, gentlemen.
Very good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I hope we've been giving you value for your time. We're going to have a very interesting conversation this evening with two very distinguished individuals who have perhaps more than anyone else shaped this resurgence of India, really, from being an importer of defense technology to an exporter now. Of course, there's an arc that we still have to follow, but the beauty is that we're now in a position to defend our own interests, our own civilization, using some of our own weaponry, and we saw that during Operation Sindoor. So let me first begin with you, General Saab. World's largest importer to now an exporter. The numbers that I've come across, maybe you can correct me, 21,000 crores. That's the highest ever. What structural changes and political decisions enable this dramatic shift? And why do you think we didn't do this earlier?
Thank you, Rahul. Firstly, a very big Jai Hind to all your viewers. And your question actually used to bother me also. When you used to look at the Ministry of Defense annual reports, and you saw in the early 2010, 11, 12, around that time, 600 odd crores worth of export. Bulk of it again was from the private industry. Was it that we were not capable? Was it that we didn't have the political will? There are so many things which have happened. we started with the joint venture model. He's here, sitting, success story. Maybe we were depending too much on transfer of technology, which was never happening. So if you can't absorb the technology, how can you export? Then even if you look at the ordnance factory corporatization meant you're getting them to be more efficient. Your teeth to tail ratio you're reducing. And I think the biggest thing happened, the political will, where the Prime Minister said, 5 billion, I want that to be pushed. And roughly at the dollar rate, if you translated or converted it, it came to about 36,000 crores or so at that time. But when the big tickets started going out, that is when the changes started happening. Then another push where the government said 75% will be spent here. The defense attaches, their roles changed. Earlier you talked to the previous lot. Quite a few defense attaches used to say, ours is a ceremonial job. Somewhere between 2000, I would say 16 to 18, the charters got revised. Ministry of Defense started allocating money to the defense attaches to say, wherever you are, hold an exhibition, hold a closed door session, tell people what exactly we are doing. The defense corridors came up. The Def Expo, I think 2022, initially because the Russia-Ukraine war, we postponed it. And then when we had it in October, a calculated decision that we are going to give stalls only to the Indian companies. Just on the lighter humor of it, somewhere closer to the date, Dr. Ajay Kumar and I, we were told by some people, you both are going to lose your jobs because you're going to have empty stalls. So from what used to be about 300 stalls, we had that year 530 plus stalls. So I think all put together, you kept pushing and you realize that there are a number of countries where economies are dependent on defense exports. I think too late in life, but I think a very good decision.
No, so you use the word political will. It's a very sort of loose motherhood kind of statement. There was a time when so-called agents used to also float around the MOD. So there was obviously a change in the manner in which you wanted to bring integrity perhaps to the process. Would you agree? Was that the real issue? You know what I'm trying to get at here.
Yes, definitely. While on paper, we didn't want to talk about the agents part of it. But if you unfold the events as that happened, bulk interest used to be in importing.
Yeah, because there was, I mean, I'm being impolitic here, but there was money to be made, wasn't it?
Obviously.
So that has changed, that entire culture.
Now you see the pride you take.
Na khane dunga. That was the culture. That's what has changed.
And you look at the pride with which people are manufacturing and exporting. Everybody is putting the shoulder to the wheel, no? Starting from an embassy to a manufacturing hub to all these delegations which come here. What do we tell them? We talk to them, we engage them, and we tell them, look, this is what is there. And now the final push is the moment your BrahMos, Dr. Mishra is here.
I'm going to ask you.
And you prove that weapon. Many a time weapons are bought or weapons are entered into the inventory without even a combat assessment of that. Now it has proved itself.
Would you say this was true? What would be the percentage of weapons that were bought without actually really putting them through the rigors?
No, you look at, forget about us. You look all over the globe. You look at what has happened to the Chinese missile PL-15. Where was it tested in combat? You look at JF-17, which was given to Pakistan. Where was it tested? Why talk about these? There are even Western weapon systems. And if I were to be bold enough to say, many of the wars which get created are the testing grounds for these weapon systems.
So are you saying, look, I'm just going to press you, that some of the Chinese equipment, because it hasn't really been tested, is undependable?
Once we are able to do some reverse engineering, we will get to know exactly whether there was a defect there. But I would prompt you to look at what's happening inside China, where so many generals are being sacked for corruption. You heard of that information that in the missiles, instead of the fuel, there is water. And if that is the weapon system, if somebody is going to give, say, from China to Pakistan, I think that makes our job easier.
I was about to think that you were talking about reverse engineering in the F-35B situation also. Mr. Mishra, this is an important point that has been made by the General, talking about the BrahMos. Contracting the BrahMos, the Philippines have come in. There's interest now from Argentina, Egypt, in Tejas jets. So I'm asking you, are Indian platforms now globally competitive? And are we still stuck somewhere in a cost over capability branding trap?
Thank you, Rahul. When you talk about global competitive and competent, I would like to tell you that we meet both the requirement. If you see in the last 5 years, we have exported radar, sensor. It falls into the sensor. We have exported Akash and BrahMos. These are the weapons. Now, in the global market, it's not easy for any weapon to be sold unless it meets the global standard, because the buyer is always having a long range of weapons in which he is interested. So when you are best, then only he will buy. Now, if you talk about the BrahMos and Akash, both, the BrahMos, in 2014, when I joined as a Director General and Chief of BrahMos, there were no procedures, structure available. And being a new CEO, I wanted to, set up a personal ambition. So I thought, this is the one which nobody has done, so let me do it. And I tell you, in those days, you go to any person because of the hangover. They used to say, what is your problem? You are getting salary. Everybody is getting salary. What is the ambition of exporting a weapon? Secondly, people were scared. They were thinking that if you sell the weapon, somebody will, they will do the reverse engineering and they will come up with a better version. I could answer both. The first thing was to change the mindset. You see, people used to think that exporting a weapon is a strategic decision. Yes, it is. But in addition to that, we have a revenue generation also. And when you generate revenue, you can always come up with a better version after some time. Now, the second question answer was that if you export, people will reverse engineer it. It's not possible. There are, when it comes to BrahMos, more than 400 different materials they are used. Number one. Number two, the subsystems are in plenty, very complicated. Even if you take out every item from the missile, you will take 25, 30 years to come up with a assembled missile which will look similar to BrahMos. Now, by that time, in 30 years, I would be much ahead. I would have already created 3, 4 versions. So not possible. So that fear also we have overcome. What I feel that our future, I'm talking about the weapon industry, arms industry, our future lies in the export. There is a limit to which Indian armed forces can buy. They can absorb the capability. And the huge capability which we have created in the PSU, private sector, that can be only used if we resort to export. Now, a step prior to that, there are 2 ways to produce an item. One is you build to print. Build to print means you give a drawing and manufacturers, they copy it. The second is build to specification, build to design. So the manufacturers have to develop the capability to design a system. Unless they develop the capability, it would be very difficult for private sector to come up with an export model. Very difficult. So manufacturing is not sufficient. You need to develop the design capability also. Here, DRDO comes into the picture. DRDO has huge capability. In fact, people talk about reform in DRDO. I tell people there is nothing wrong with DRDO. Everything is good. There has to be reform in the users' mindset. Because if they change, they would be able to come on the same platform and talk to each other and come with the weapon which will be uniquely given to the Indian Armed Forces. In the Sindur, we have created the weapons. Our armed forces have very confidently used it because the political system has given them support. Political system has told them, this is the only thing you have. You can't import, use it. And now I tell you, you talk to any officer, military officer, they're very proud. They say that we have used Indian weapon system which are as good as, sometimes better than the imported weapons and sensors, both. So there's a change in the mindset in the last 10 years. You see, sometimes it happens due to the evolution. Sometimes it happens due to the political wish. And sometimes it happens due to the technology. So I feel it's a combination of everything. And our defense forces are, they're happy, they're satisfied that yes, the DRDO developed system, Indian made system, they work.
Well, I'll come to the DRDO bit in just a few moments, but I want to continue with this interesting phrase you use that exports are strategically driven sometimes. There's a strategic decision behind exporting. So I want to ask you, because you know, we've got BrahMos to ASEAN countries, the Tejas to Africa. It's interesting because China is also fishing in those markets. So are we doing this to counterbalance the Chinese influence in these markets? Because or even in Africa and Latin America, the Prime Minister actually headed to Latin America in the next few days. There might be conversations there too about Indian weapon systems, Indian capacities. So is this now a competition also to sort of checkmate China?
It may be one reason, but it is not the only reason. We have learnt that it generates revenue for our Indian industry. That's very important. The second is we have to earn friends and we have to develop the deep strategic interest. Maybe earlier, when we were not the fourth largest economy, we were thinking to only survive. Now we are talking about thriving. So we used to think that first let us meet our own requirement, then we'll talk about the export. And when we are talking about Africa, ASEAN, and Middle East, Americas, we are trying to develop deeper strategic interests and trying to earn the friends. And of course, China is always there. And as a scientist, I love competition. If China is my competitor, so be it. We will compete and come up with the best product and sets, and which will meet the requirement. Now, you see, here I want to tell you one thing. We are today, we are self-sufficient in the missile technology. We can design, develop, manufacture any missile which our armed forces say, number one. Number two, you asked about the Tejas. You see, the Tejas is having a different, profile, different story. We are still importing engine. Maybe after 5 years or 7 years, we will have our own engine, 5th generation.
But why has it taken so long to develop this engine technology?
It takes something which takes 25, 30 years, you can't create in 5 years.
But sir, we put a man on the south pole of the moon. I mean, a satellite on the south pole of the moon. We landed there. And this is a question that is genuinely asked by a lot of people. Because we're so advanced, we're doing so brilliantly. Yet we have this one big lacuna.
Without, demeaning the space efforts, it is much more complicated than that. Creating an aero engine is very complicated. There are many reasons for it. And there are spatial materials, spatial subsystems, spatial manufacturing processes. And you remember, you have to fly a pilot for thousands of hours in the atmosphere, not in the space. In space, it's a matter of few hours. Another reason is if you see globally, there are only 3 countries which manufacture the engine. And had it been easier, then you would have been manufacturing engine like a car, automobile engine. It's very complicated, but I'm sure if the government give permission, I'm sure they are already on the job. Once we get the permission, within 5 years, we can develop a 5th generation engine. DRDO chief has also stated so.
Yes, he has. He's put a timeline to it.
Yes.
General Khandare, how do you assess DRDO's performance? We're talking about it. Are we seeing real-time project maturity? I know that the Air Chief made a few comments about mission creep, as he suggested, and extended timelines, which still mar credibility, let's put it that way. Why is that? Why does that continue? There's been a mentality change, but somehow
there are many things to it. You know, what DRDO has to essentially do, people have to firstly understand that DRDO is not meant for borrowing a product and then putting a brand on it. I look at DRDO as somebody who should be doing technology discovery. And technology discovery obviously takes time. And when Air Chief mentions, firstly, very bold statements and a very honest chief, where he is candid, and I think that's the sign of a good chief, where he mentions it openly. And when I'm saying openly, that video which got leaked was not his creation at all. So the engine which is still creating a problem, and there are other timelines also which slip past. Some of it may be due to possibly some internal reason, but a lot of it is based on leveraging from outside, whether it is metallurgy, whether it is technology. And it is not only about HAL or about the aero engines. I can tell you another example of an ammunition 125 millimeter APFSDS. For years together, for decades together, we've been buying it off Russia, billions of dollars worth. Why were we not able to do it? Obviously, again, what the Defense Secretary said, there is some deficiency even in the industry, that they are not able to handle it. So, but the moment there is a lot of enthusiasm that we are going to take everything here, then people have started putting a lot of money and muscle into that. Otherwise, even as late as last about 5 years, people were tempted to say, you let me go and I'll get it from there. We are not interested in that. And one point I want to make based on what Dr. Mishra was saying, and you also asked me about why so much of emphasis on defense exports. Remember, we spent so much of money and so much of effort in manufacturing, putting assembly lines in place. What will be our domestic appetite? There is a limit to that. Will you close the assembly lines or will you let them dry up because there is no demand? So you have to ensure that you have to hunt for purchasers, you have to give them the best possible deal, and you have to ensure that if one deal finishes, you have to look for next one. You have to keep doing it. And I think we are pretty doing well on that. You mentioned Latin America. I used to often joke that for us, Africa was not the dark continent, it was always Latin America, because we could never breach the language issue. But subsequently, many things happened. In fact, Dr. Mishra, when he was going around the world looking for buyers, he's the one who translated so much of literature and gave it to people. I'm a witness to that. And in fact, again, what he mentioned, the inhibition, even I had inhibitions. I have discussed with him so many times, and he put our mind to rest. And that is when the decisions started coming, okay, let's go. Let's put it ahead. And there is obviously one more big issue, whether it is DRDO related or whether it is BrahMos or anybody else. Our worry is when it is a high-tech, will it fall into the hands of our adversary? So we have to choose the countries extremely cautiously, carefully. Don't the Americans do it? If they sell you something, they're always breathing down your neck to see, count exactly which tail number aircraft is where. And even before the results of the air duel are out, they are there defending their own stocks. So I think it's a very complicated business.
Well, the horizon is big, though, and we're moving towards it very quickly, and partly because you've said that there is will now. So let's hope that that continues. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We run out of time. It was an engrossing conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rahul.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause. Now, before I begin the next session, let me ask you a question. Are you missing the ladies on this stage? Are you doing that? Well, did you think that we are not going to make this gender inclusive as our Indian defense? Because we do know how India is promoting more and more women, particularly in border defense. And that is how important and significant this next session is going to be. So we now are going to be telling you a story of strength, sacrifice, and service, told by the women who live it every day. So this particular session is called From Sindur to Seema. It is about India's women warriors in uniform, women who've stood guard and defended our post during Operation Sindoor for 72 straight hours. So please join me in welcoming Assistant Commandant Neha Bhandari and BSF Constables Manjeet Kaur, Malkeet Kaur and Swapna Rath, women who have redefined courage at the border. And moderating this discussion is a powerful voice of CNN News 18, Shivani Gupta.
Thank you, Greha. Thanks a lot to all of you for being here. It's an absolute honor and privilege for me to be sitting next to women who have actually broken barriers, who have broken a glass ceiling. I'm sitting next to Assistant Commandant Neha Bhandari, who has become a household name after Operation Sindoor because she became the first female officer of the Indian Army to be commanding a forward post in the Indian Army that had never been done before. And she was leading a team of 6 brave women. 3 of them are with me. I really do think their story is an absolutely fantastic one. How long have we thought about or debated whether women can perform in combat roles, in frontline roles in the Indian Army? And I think we're slowly witnessing that change is possible. Assistant Commandant Neha Bhandari, first of all, many congratulations. You received the Chief of Army Staff's Commendation Disc for the role that she played during Operation Sindoor.
Thank you, ma'am.
मैं ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के बारे में तो बात करना ही चाहूंगी. मैं चाहती हूं कि आप हमारे साथ डिटेल्स शेयर करें कि वो जो 3-4 दिन थे वो आप लोगों के लिए कैसे थे. जब आप वहां पे अपनी फॉरवर्ड पोजीशन पे आपके पास 2 पोस्ट थे और आपके सामने पाकिस्तान के 3 पोस्ट थे अखनूर सेक्टर में, तो आपने कैसे उनको डिफेंड किया, दूसरी तरफ से क्या गोलाबारी हो रही थी, वो उन सब चीजों के बारे में बात करेंगे. लेकिन थोड़ा सा हम अपने लेडी ऑफिसर्स के बारे में थोड़ा सा समझते हैं. नेहा जी, आपके बारे में तो हमने देखा ही है कि आप 3rd जनरेशन आर्म फोर्सेस मेंबर हैं. आपके दादाजी आर्मी में थे, आपके माता पिता दोनों CISF में हैं और आप BSF में हैं. तो क्या आप बचपन से ही जानती थी कि आपको यही करना है?
जैसे आपने बताया, मैं 3rd जनरेशन हूँ और जहाँ से मैं बिलोंग करती हूँ उत्तराखंड, वहाँ ऑलमोस्ट हर 2nd हाउस होल्ड से आपको कोई ना कोई आर्म फोर्सेस में मिलेगा. यस, मेरे दादाजी आर्मी में थे और मेरे मदर एंड फादर दोनों ही CRPF से हैं और मैं BSF में. तो मैं इनको देखते हुए बड़ी हुई और आज यहाँ पहुँची तो कहीं ना कहीं था कि हाँ, मुझे भी इनकी तरह करना है. और रही बात BSF की, तो BSF को फ्रंट लाइन से हमेशा काम करने का मौका मिलता है, तो मुझे था शौक कि हाँ, मुझे BSF ज्वाइन करनी है.
बट जब आपने ज्वाइन करी थी, कभी सोचा था कि ऐसा भी मौका मिलेगा कि जब इंडिया पाकिस्तान के बीच में जंग हो रही है, जंग ही कह सकते हैं उसको, 1971 के बाद पहली बार ये ऐसा हुआ है. शॉर्ट ड्यूरेशन था, लेकिन जंग जो हो रही थी उसमें आपको फ्रंट लाइन पे ऐसा मौका मिलेगा इतनी जल्दी?
इतनी जल्दी का तो नहीं सोचा था, बट हाँ हर बीएसएफ का पर्सनल ये सोचता है कि मुझे इस चीज़ का मौका मिले, मैं जिस चीज़ के लिए बीएसएफ में आया हूँ। और मैं यहाँ बहुत प्राउडली बताऊंगी कि जो भी इसके पार्टिसिपेंट्स थे, जिनने भी ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में पार्ट लिया है, दे आर वेरी प्राउड। उनको बहुत खुशी है कि उनको सामने रह के इंडिया को डिफेंड करने का मौका मिला है।
And we are proud of you as well. I have with me मलकीत कौर and मंजीत कौर। ये लोग 17 सालों से बीएसएफ में हैं, तो आप लोग तो वेटरन हैं। मलकीत, आप बताइए आपने क्यों बीएसएफ ज्वाइन किया और बीएसएफ में अभी तक आपका एक्सपीरियंस कैसा रहा है, स्पेशली ये जो ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में आपने हिस्सा लिया?
मेरे फादर बीएसएफ में थे और मेरे ब्रदर भी बीएसएफ में हैं, तो मेरे को प्राउड है कि मैं बीएसएफ में हूँ। तो मैं 17 साल हो गई मेरी जॉब को, मैंने बाघा बॉर्डर में भी ड्यूटी की है, तो मेरे को प्राउड है।
तो आपके माँ बाप चाहते थे आप बीएसएफ में आए?
जी, बीएसएफ में तो 2008 में फर्स्ट महिला कांस्टेबल भर्ती हुई थी, तो मैं ज्वाइन किया। बस स्पोर्ट्समैन थी, तो मैं 2008 में मैंने अभी +2 की थी, तो फॉर्म फिल किया तो हो गई सिलेक्शन।
ये लोग वेट कर रहे थे मैम, बीएसएफ लड़कियों के लिए अपॉर्चुनिटी खोले और हम बीएसएफ में आ जाए।
बिल्कुल। मंजीत जी, आपकी स्टोरी भी कुछ ऐसी ही रही, आप भी 17 साल पहले ज्वाइन किया था?
हाँ जी मैम, मैंने भी 17 साल पहले ही किया था ज्वाइन, 2008 में ही किया था।
क्या सोच के किया था उस वक्त?
मेरे को बीएसएफ की ड्रेस बहुत अच्छी लगती थी और मैं ड्रेस देखकर इसमें आई, और मेरे को ऐसा भी था कि मैं भी ऐसा मौका मिले और मैं भी गोलियां चलाऊं, ऐसा था।
आप दोनों गन पोजीशंस होल्ड करती हैं, तो गोली चलाने का शौक था आपको क्या बचपन से?
जी, जैसे दुश्मन के आई मैं गोली चलाऊं, जैसे फिल्मों में देखते हम, तो मेरे को भी ऐसा ही था कुछ।
Amazing. So, that just tells you it isn't just boys who are fascinated with guns and maybe taking on some enemies for the country. Swapna, आप young officer हैं नेहा की टीम में, आपने 2023 में ही ज्वाइन किया था बीएसएफ को, तो आपको तो बहुत जल्दी मौका मिल गया, बिल्कुल आते ही ट्रायल बाय फायर हो गया आपका, ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में सीधा हिस्सा लिया आपने।
मैंने सोचा नहीं था कि इतना जल्दी मुझे मौका मिल जाएगा, पर अच्छा लगा बहुत।
हाँ, आपने बीएसएफ क्या सोच के ज्वाइन किया था?
क्योंकि मैं बंगाल से हूँ, तो उधर में मैंने देखा बीएसएफ को काम करते हुए, तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता था बचपन से, तो मेरा भी शौक था इसमें आने का।
तो कभी ये नहीं सोचा कि ये तो मर्दों का काम है, मैं क्या करूंगी यहाँ पे?
नहीं, मैंने बहुत लेडी ऑफिसर को भी मैंने देखा था, तो मुझे भी अच्छा लगा उनको देख के काम करते हुए, तो मेरा भी सपना था कि मैं भी वो वर्दी पहनूं।
जी जी, बहुत अच्छा। इनफैक्ट इनकी जनरेशन में तो आपके जैसे ऑफिसर्स और देखे हैं। आपने जब ज्वाइन किया था मंजीत जी, तब तो महिलाएं बहुत कम होती थी, तो तब उस वक्त आपको ये नहीं लगता था कि मैं कोई और लाइन ले लूं? तो
नहीं मैम, मेरे को ऐसा कुछ नहीं लगा। मैंने फर्स्ट टाइम ये किया और मेरे को यही शौक था और यही मेरे को मिल गया।
मंजीत जी, आपके लिए?
नहीं, मेरे को भी शौक था इसका भी।
तो कभी ये नहीं सोचा कि ये काम शायद महिलाओं के लिए नहीं है?
नहीं,
ऐसा कभी नहीं सोचा। बहुत अच्छा। This is the kind of barriers we want to break. I want to understand from Assistant Commandant Neha Bhandari what really happened during Operation Sindoor. Can you begin by telling me when was the first call that you received, the first order that you received, which was officially part of Operation Sindoor, and what were you told?
Ma'am, after 22nd of April, when the incident happened in Pahalgam, it was quite evident that our government will retaliate, because this time our civilians were targeted. So from that particular, very particular that day, we started preparation on every fold. We started strengthening our own morchars or our bunkers where we will be staying if any such retaliation happens. And also we started giving training more seriously. This used to happen on a daily basis, but we became more alert, more precautious towards what we are doing. And
because you were anticipating that there would be shelling happening.
Yes, ma'am, we were anticipating that we will do something for sure, and Pakistan is not a state which we can trust upon that they will not retaliate back. तो इसके लिए हमने अपने हर जवान को बताया SOPs कि कुछ भी होने पे आपको कैसे करना है, यानी अगर सामने से गोली आ गई तो आपको क्या करना है, सामने से एरिया वेपन्स का फायर आ गया तो आपको क्या करना है, अपने खुद को कैसे सेफ रखना है, साथ में आपको कैसे अपने जो उनको एरिया दिया रहता है उसको कैसे बचाना है। हमने किसी भी इलीगल एंट्री को रोकना है, क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं से वही पीछे जाके अटैक करते। तो हमने हर चीज़ का ध्यान रखते हुए हर SOP अपने जवान को बताई। ये एकदम 22 अप्रैल से शुरू हो गया था। आते आते 7 अप्रैल हुआ और इस टाइम बहुत सारी विजिट्स,
May 7 को जब हुआ,
May 7 को बहुत सारी विजिट्स शुरू हो गई थी, क्योंकि माहौल इंटेंस हो गया था। आपको हर तरीके के मैसेजेस मिल रहे थे, ये हो सकता, वो हो सकता है, ये हो सकता है। तो हर ऑफिशियल ने, हर कमांडिंग ऑफिसर ने इंस्पेक्ट किया कि हमने तैयारी सही से करी है, नहीं करी है। हर किसी ने मुझे मोटिवेट किया, मेरी टीम को मोटिवेट किया, सबको कि या आप बहुत अच्छा कर रहे हैं, आगे भी ऐसे अच्छा करते रहेंगे। May 7 को ऑपरेशन सिंदूर जब एक्चुअल में एयरफोर्स ने डीप इनसाइड पाकिस्तान टारगेट किया, तो इट वॉज क्वाइट एविडेंट, अब हो गया है। तो सामने से पाकिस्तान ने भी थ्रू आउट जम्मू बॉर्डर एरिया वेपन्स स्टार्ट कर दिए थे। एंड वी बीइंग एट बॉर्डर्स, इंटरनेशनल बॉर्डर, हमसे जस्ट लगा लीजिए 100 मीटर पे पाकिस्तान की पोस्ट रहती है। तो जो कम रेंज के एरिया वेपन्स भी है वो बहुत इजीली हमारी पोस्ट पे, हम पे टारगेट किए जा सकते थे। तो अगेन हमने फिर थ्रू आउट दैट पीरियड ऑफ 72 आवर्स हमारे जो ट्रूप्स थे वो आगे जो हमारी फॉरवर्ड पोस्ट होती उसमें रहे।
72 आवर्स के लिए आप फॉरवर्ड पोस्ट में रहे?
हाँ जी, 72 आवर्स
बिना किसी ब्रेक के? बिना
किसी ब्रेक के, क्योंकि थ्रू आउट बॉर्डर को गार्ड करना वॉज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। हमें किसी भी तरीके की चूक उस टाइम मंजूर नहीं थी और उस टाइम हमें अपनी भी सेफ्टी ध्यान रखनी थी। तो हमारे जो जवान थे आगे फॉरवर्ड पोस्ट पे डिप्लॉयड थे और यूँ होते होते अब हर जगह शेलिंग हो रही है, आगे इधर उधर। आप थ्रू आउट बंकर्स में, रात में भी आप बंकर्स में लेटे हैं। मैं अपने जवानों के साथ मैं बंकर्स में थी और उनने मुझे कभी फील नहीं कराया कि मैं अलग हूँ, वो अलग है, या उनने मुझे नहीं सुनना या मैंने उन्हें नहीं सुना। मुझे कभी फील नहीं कराया कि मैं एक लड़की हूँ, और ना मुझे कभी इनने फील कराया कि ये लड़कियां हैं और ये डर रही है, और ना किसी मेरे मेल ट्रूप ने फील किया कि वो डर रहे हैं। दे वर वेरी एक्साइटेड कि उनको ये मौका मिला है। हम उनको मोटिवेट कर रहे थे और होते होते फिर May 10 आया, जब एक्चुअल में पाकिस्तान की तरफ से हमारी अपनी पोस्टों पे एरिया वेपन्स का उनने अटैक शुरू कर दिया। दिन के 3 बजे थे और शेलिंग होने लगी। अब आपके अपने ऊपर आ रहा है, तो दैट वाज द टाइम कि यस अब हमने खोलना है।
अब आपको रिटेलिएट करना है।
हमने रिटेलिएट करना है, क्योंकि दिस टाइम उनने हम पे अटैक कर दिया।
तो आपको फ्री ऑर्डर्स थे कि जैसे जैसे पाकिस्तान कुछ भी करेगा आपको फायर टू फायर रिस्पॉन्ड करना है?
हाँ जी मैम, हमको ऑर्डर्स थे एंड हर कमांडिंग ऑफिसर ने हमें बताया था कि जितना आप कर सकते हैं आप फुल रिटेलिएट करें। अपने अकॉर्डिंगली आपको ये भी देखना है कि एम्यूनिशन बचाना है। ये नहीं पता था इतनी जल्दी सीज फायर हो जाएगा और वो इतनी जल्दी पीछे हट जाएंगे, तो एक्शन ज्यादा अच्छा होता अगर पता चलता कि 1 आवर ड्रिल है। तो ये नहीं पता था बस, इसलिए हम एम्यूनिशन बचा के चले और होते होते 5-5:30 बज गए। हमने हर तरीके से उन पे अटैक किया। वो सर्वेलेंस इक्विपमेंट यूज कर रहे थे हम पे, शायद जो शेलिंग कर रहे हैं उसको चेक करने के लिए कि एकदम हमारी पोस्टों पे आ रहा नहीं आ रहा। तो जो हमारा फर्स्ट हैंड एक्शन था, हमने उनके सर्वेलेंस इक्विपमेंट्स तोड़े। उनने वापस रिटेलिएट किया हमारे तोड़ने के लिए, तो हमने फिर उनको अलग अलग जगह से टारगेट किया कि वो एकदम टारगेटेड एक्शन हमारे सर्वेलेंस इक्विपमेंट्स में ना कर पाए, क्योंकि हम उनसे उनको मॉनिटर करते हैं थ्रू आउट डे नाइट। बीएसएफ फ्रंट लाइन पे रहती है, फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस है। तो जो नॉर्मल हमारा पीस टाइम ड्यूटीज रहती है उस टाइम हम पूरे बॉर्डर को चेक करते हैं और हमारी जो मैन पावर तो डिप्लॉयड है, साथ में हमारे सर्वेलेंस इक्विपमेंट भी बहुत यूजफुल है, तो हमें वो बचाने थे। तो इस तरीके से ये होते होते 5:30 हुआ और सीज फायर डिक्लेयर हो गया मैम। तो
मौका रह गया आपकी बार। नहीं, बट आपने इतना अच्छा एक्शन किया कि आपकी 2 पोस्ट थी, तो वो 2 पोस्ट तो आपने बचाई ही। जो सर्वेलेंस आप इक्विपमेंट कह रहे हैं वो भी बचाया, लेकिन जो आपके सामने जो पाकिस्तान की 3 पोस्ट थी वहां से वो छोड़ के भाग गए।
हाँ जी मैम।
ये आपने कैसे किया?
मैम मैं बता रही हूँ ना, हमने एरिया वेपन्स से उनको टारगेट किया हर तरफ से।
तो वो इतना हेवी आपने एक्शन किया कि वो छोड़ के भाग गए वहां से?
हाँ जी मैम।
ये आपने देखा कि वो खाली करके चले गए?
जी मैम।
अमेजिंग। मलकित, आप कुछ शेयर करना चाहेंगी? 72 आवर्स के लिए आपके जो ये बंकर होते हैं बहुत छोटे छोटे होते हैं, बहुत कॉम्पैक्ट बंकर्स होते हैं, आप गन पोजीशन होल्ड करती हैं, है ना? तो आप अपना एक्सपीरियंस शेयर करना चाहेंगी? मतलब 3-4 दिन के लिए ऐसे वहां बंकर में रहना और बिल्कुल अलर्ट रहना, मॉनिटर करना, और ऊपर से आपके ऊपर शेलिंग भी हो रही है, वेपन्स यूज किए जा रहे हैं, तो वो कैसा रहे दिन आपके लिए?
हमें तो वैसे बोला गया था कि अगर आप वापस जाना चाहते हो पीछे तो जा सकते हो, पर हमें ऐसा मौका मिला तो बढ़िया लगा कि नहीं, हमें पीछे नहीं जाना चाहिए। 17 साल बाद ऐसा मौका मिल रहा है, तो फिर हम 48 घंटे से ऊपर ही हमने टाइम उधर निकाला। तो 3 हम लड़कियां थी, दोनों एक मोर्चे में ये थी और मेरे मोर्चे में हम थी। तो 9 तारीख तक तो हम तो रहे, फिर 10 तारीख को फायरिंग शुरू हो गई। तो फिर 5:30 बजे तक तो मतलब उन्होंने बोल दिया फायर बंद करने के लिए, तो बाद में बस इतने रहे।
उस टाइम पे आपको, आप जैसे आप बता रहे हैं, आई डोंट नो हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू नो, बट दे वर गिवन एन ऑप्शन टू काइंड ऑफ लीव देयर फॉरवर्ड पोजीशंस, बट दे ऑल चोज टू स्टे देयर। मंजीत, आप शेयर करना चाहेंगी उस वक्त, क्योंकि ये शायद पहली बार इतना एक्सपीरियंस रहा होगा एक्टिव शेलिंग का, एक्टिव कॉम्बैट का, आप शेयर करना चाहेंगी कि वो एक्सपीरियंस कैसा डिफरेंट था? आपकी ट्रेनिंग तो ऑफ कोर्स होती है इस चीज की, लेकिन उसको एक्चुअली देखना अपने सामने।
हाँ जी मैम, ऐसे जैसे 10 मई को शुरू हुआ, तो ऐसे तीन का टाइम हुआ। जैसे फायरिंग शुरू हो गया, हमने कहा कि फायरिंग शुरू हो गया तो हमने भी शुरू करना है। इधर हम पर भी आ रहा था तो हमने भी उनके ऊपर फायरिंग शुरू कर दिया। तो ऐसे हम भी कर रहे थे, वो भी कर रहे थे, तो वो एक कर रहे थे, हम 4 उनको ऊपर डाल रहे थे। तो ऐसे करते लगातार हो रहा, तो फिर उन्होंने बंद कर दिया। जैसे हमारा फायर चल रहा था, उनको मजबूर हो के वो बंद कर दिया उन्होंने फायर। फिर
किसी भी मोमेंट में आपको लगा कि ये शायद नहीं हैंडल हो पाएगा, थोड़ा सेफर पोजीशन पे मूव करना चाहिए?
नहीं मैम, ऐसा कुछ नहीं लगा हमें कि ऐसा कुछ होगा। हम अपना काम कर रहे थे।
तो मुझे तो लग रहा है कि आप लोगों में बहुत जोश होगा कि मौका मिला है आज कुछ दिखाने का, सारी ट्रेनिंग यूज करने का, तो यूज करते हैं।
जी जी, हम जैसे अभी हम 6 लड़कियां थी, तो जो पीछे थी उनको भी फील हो रहा कि हम भी अगर होते उधर तो हमें भी ये मौका
फॉरवर्ड पोजीशन में आ जाते।
जी जी
जी। स्वप्ना जी, आप अपना कोई एक्सपीरियंस शेयर करना चाहेंगी? कुछ डर लगा उस वक्त?
नहीं, डर तो नहीं लगा, क्योंकि हमारा ट्रेनिंग ही ऐसा दिया गया था हमें। तो हमें पहले से बोला गया था कि अलर्ट होके रहना है, क्योंकि कभी भी कुछ भी हो सकता है। तो जैसे फायर आया तब हमने भी फायर किया।
आप क्या वेपन्स यूज करती हैं?
हमने फायर किया था LMG से, पर हमारे जो पर्सनल वेपन है वो 5.56 राइफल, इंसस राइफल है।
जी। आप अपना वो जो मई 7 से लेके मई 10 तक, जब तक सीज फायर हुई, उस 3-4 दिन का टाइम आपने कैसे बिताया, उस एक्सपीरियंस को शेयर करना चाहेंगी?
3-4 दिन अब एक साथ थे, तो
बंकर में लाइफ कैसी होती है?
बंकर का लाइफ अब सोचो तो मजे में आएंगे, क्योंकि हम
Neha, would you like to describe what it's like to be all pushed up in a bunker and, to be on high alert as you were at that time?
मैम, हमारे पास अलग अलग तरीके के बंकर्स है। कुछ नए बने हैं और कुछ बन रहे हैं, और जो नए बने हैं वो डबल फ्लोरी है, और जो पुराने हैं सारे सेफ हैं। अच्छी खासी उनमें वॉल में थिकनेस है, लेकिन कुछ सिंगल रूम वाले हैं, कुछ डबल रूम वाले। तो जो सिंगल रूम है, आप समझ लीजिए आपको वही 3 लोग दिन रात वही देखने हैं। आप ना बाहर आ सकते हैं ना कहीं जा सकते हैं, आपने वही रहना है और अलर्ट रहना है। आपको पता है सब कुछ इधर गिर रहा है, उधर गिर रहा है, यहाँ हो रहा है, पीछे हो रहा है। तो उस एक रूम में आप रहते हैं, हर डेली एक्टिविटी जो आप वहीं करते हैं, और इतना ही बताऊंगा।
तो आप अपने आप को अलर्ट कैसे रखते हैं इतने टाइम तक एक ही कमरे में?
मैम, सिचुएशन अलर्ट आपको खुद कर देती है। आप कैसे सो जाएंगे, आपके पीछे गिर गया, आपको पता है ऊपर गिर जाएगा, कहीं गिर जाएगा, आप कैसे? वैसे तो BSF थ्रू आउट अलर्ट रहती है मैम, हमारी ड्यूटी है, और हमें इस तरीके से ट्रेन किया गया है कि हमें पता है अपनी ड्यूटी हमने अपनी अच्छी से फुलफिल करनी है। बट ऐसी सिचुएशन में आप बिल्कुल भी चांस नहीं ले सकते, क्योंकि इस बार पता है हम पे खुद पे भी आएगा।
जी जी बिल्कुल नहीं, बट आप कुछ डिस्क्राइब कीजिए मलकीत जी की, जैसे आपको कितने घंटों के लिए लगातार खड़े रहना पड़ता है या जगे रहना पड़ता है, कैसे आप डिवाइड करते हैं आपस में?
हमारी 6 जैसे ओपी होगी हमारी, तो 6 से 12 बजे तक होगी। अगर FDP में रात को नाका है तो फुल डे पर 3 घंटे का होता है हमारा, 3 शिफ्ट में होता है हमारा। हाँ जी।
और अपने आप को बिल्कुल अलर्ट रखना, उसके लिए आपने कुछ स्ट्रेटेजी अपनी बनाई है? सबके अपने अपने तरीके होते हैं।
नहीं, नहीं, अपने आप को भी सेव करना है, जो हमारे ऊपर मतलब जो रेस्ट कर रहे हैं, जो उनकी नेक्स्ट ड्यूटी है, तो उनको भी सेव करना है, तो अपने एरिया को भी देखना है।
जी बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। मैं आपसे पूछना चाहती हूँ कि आपको लगता है कि ये जो एग्जाम्पल आप लोगों ने सेट किया है मंजीत जी, उसकी वजह से कॉन्फिडेंस आएगा बीएसएफ में और लोगों को भी और लड़कियों को भी, और पूरी जो डिफेंस फोर्सेस हैं और जो देश है उनको भी कॉन्फिडेंस आएगा कि महिलाएं भी फॉरवर्ड पोजीशन में या कॉम्बैट रोल्स में अच्छा परफॉर्म कर सकती हैं?
हाँ जी मैम, जैसे उधर बॉर्डर के लोग हैं वो भी बड़े खुश हुए कि आप लोगों ने लड़ाई लड़ी, आप पीछे नहीं गए। जब उन्होंने देखा कि इतनी फायरिंग हो रही थी, जे इधर ही है, वो तो मान के बोले इतना फायरिंग होगा, आप इधर ही रुके। मैंने हमने कहा हाँ, तो बोले प्राउड है हमें, आप लोग इधर रुके हैं, हमें भी इतना कॉन्फिडेंस है कि हम भी अपनी बेटियों को इधर भेजेंगे।
ये गाँव वालों ने बोला आपको?
हाँ जी, जब आप कर सकते हैं तो हमारी बेटियां भी करेंगी ऐसे।
The BSF destroyed as many as 76 Pakistani posts during this operation and 42 forward defense locations, 3 terror launch pads, and these were obviously used for Pakistan's offensive capabilities along this entire Jammu international border. BSF ने जो ओवरऑल जो रोल प्ले किया है नेहा ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में, उसके बारे में आप क्या मानती हैं? क्योंकि पाकिस्तान से बहुत शेलिंग हुई, बहुत फायरिंग हुई और उन्होंने रेसिडेंशियल एरियाज को भी टारगेट करने की कोशिश करी इसमें।
मैम, मैं बीएसएफ के बारे में बताना चाहूँगी। बीएसएफ 2 फ्रंट्स में यानी 2 बॉर्डर्स को गार्ड करती हैं, एक बांग्लादेश एंड पाकिस्तान। एंड वहाँ का क्लाइमेट एंड हर चीज़ देखें तो थ्रू आउट बहुत चेंजेस हैं। राजस्थान में बिल्कुल अलग हैं, आपको बंगाल में अलग मिलेगा, नॉर्थ ईस्ट में अलग मिलेगा, एंड जम्मू में अलग है, पंजाब अलग है, हर जगह की ड्यूटी पैटर्न्स अलग हैं। तो इतने चेंजेस के वजह से जो बीएसएफ का ट्रूप है, भले वो मेल हो वो फीमेल है, वो इतने अजाइल बन गए हैं कि अब उन्हें ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं पड़ता है। दे आर वेरी स्ट्रांग, हर चीज़ को बहुत जल्दी अडेप्ट कर जाते हैं। तो इस टाइम भी जब ऑपरेशन सिंदूर चला था, बीएसएफ फ्रंट लाइन में रहती है और फ्रंट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस है, तो उसमें मैं ये कहूँगी कि आप हमारा मेन डिफेंस तो बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है ही, हमें उसको बचाना है, अदरवाइज कंट्री कहीं ना कहीं उसमें कमज़ोर बनेगी। लेकिन आपके फॉरवर्ड एलिमेंट्स भी स्ट्रांग होने चाहिए। अगर सामने से कोई दुश्मन आपकी तरफ आ रहा है और आपके फॉरवर्ड एलिमेंट्स ने ही उनको हरा दिया है, पछाड़ दिया है, पूरा उनको तबाह कर दिया है, तो उनका मोटिवेशन बहुत कम हो जाएगा। उनको सोचने में मजबूर होना पड़ेगा कि इनका मेन डिफेंस कितना स्ट्रांग होगा अगर इनके फ्रंट लाइन पे जो बैठे वो इतने स्ट्रांग हो सकते हैं। तो मैं ये थ्रू आउट ये रोल बीएसएफ ने प्ले किया। मैं
बल्कि किस तरह की फिजिकल ट्रेनिंग आपको करनी पड़ती है ये बताइए जरा, क्योंकि जो लड़कियां चाहेंगी कि वो भी बीएसएफ ज्वाइन करे, तो किस तरह का फिजिकल एफर्ट या ट्रेनिंग लगती है आपकी?
हमारे तो रनिंग होती है, रनिंग के बाद हाई जंप, लॉन्ग जंप इसकी करनी, और मेडिकल होगा और इसमें रिटन टेस्ट होगा, बस यही है।
बट फिजिकली तो बहुत मेहनत लगती होगी, क्योंकि आपका काम भी, जैसे नेहा बोल रही है कि वेदर भी बहुत एक्सट्रीम होता है जिन जगहों में आप सर्व करते हो, और ड्यूटी भी बहुत सख्त होती है, तो फिजिकली अपने आप को बहुत स्ट्रांग बनाना पड़ता है।
जी, जो घर से आता है वो तो पहले नॉर्मल होता है, पर जब 9 महीने की ट्रेनिंग मिलती है उससे आदमी अपने आप स्ट्रांग हो जाता है, और यूनिफॉर्म डालेंगे तो और आदमी स्ट्रांग हो जाता है।
स्वप्ना, मैं आपसे पूछना चाहती हूँ कि आप बहुत यंग थे इस टीम के मेंबर, आपके साथ और भी थे 2-3 जो 2023 में ज्वाइन किया था। आपने क्या सीखा ऑपरेशन सिंदूर से? आपकी क्या लर्निंग रही? और आपने नेहा को भी कमांड करते हुए देखा, आपकी एक फीमेल कमांडेंट थी, तो उस सब से क्या सीखा आपने? आपके एक्सपीरियंस में आपने इस ऑपरेशन सिंदूर से क्या लर्निंग ली, क्या याद रखेंगे?
याद रखेंगे कि ऐसे फायर तो मैंने सुना था कि होता है ऐसे पोस्ट में, तो हमारे पोस्ट में भी होता, तो पहले लगा था कि क्या करेंगे, इसका जवाब हम दे पाएंगे या नहीं दे पाएंगे, तो हमने किया, तो हमें बहुत अच्छा लगा कि अगर अगली बार भी होगा तो हम उसका जवाब दे सकेंगे।
तो अब ये कॉन्फिडेंस है कि अब कभी भी कोई मौका मिलेगा तो हम
हाँ,
जवाब दे
कॉन्फिडेंस
सकते
आ
हैं।
गया है इस चीज का कि हम फार कर सकेंगे अगर अगली बार भी हुआ इस तरफ।
जी, और आपके परिवार में जब उन्होंने सुना कि आपने ये काम किया, ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में हिस्सा लिया, तो घर परिवार में क्या बोला उन्होंने?
उन्होंने बहुत प्राउड फील किया क्योंकि हमारे घर से पहली मैं जनरेशन हूँ जो पुलिस में ऐसे आए हैं इधर पे डिफेंस में।
जी,
तो रिलेटिव्स तो उन्होंने भी प्राउड फील किया।
बिल्कुल। सो यू आर एन इंस्पिरेशन फॉर अ होल न्यू जनरेशन इन योर फैमिली। मंजीत, आप क्या मैसेज देना चाहेंगी लड़कियों को, देश की बेटियों को जो चाहती हैं कि वो भी डिफेंस फोर्सेस में आए, बीएसएफ में आए?
मैं यही कहना चाहती हूँ बीएसएफ बहुत अच्छी है, इसमें आए और उनको भी मौका मिले, ऐसा मिला तो वो भी ऐसे जवाब दें। तो स्ट्रांग है हमारे देश की बेटियां सभी, यही दूंगी।
Neha, what is the kind of support that you get or you have got from your male colleagues or not just superiors? For example, tell me first about your male colleagues. Have they ever made you feel that, oh, you know, maybe you can't handle it as much as we can handle it?
No, ma'am. I am very proud to say that they never differentiated that I am a female. उन्हें ऐसा कभी हुआ ही नहीं कि मैं अच्छी बात और बुरी बात, जितना उनको तारीफ मिलती, जितना उनको काम करने का मौका मिलता है मुझे भी मिलता है, जितना उनको डांट मिलती है मुझे भी मिलती है। तो यहीं से आप फील कर सकते हैं कि मुझे कभी अलग से नहीं देखा जाता है कि मैं अलग हूँ। और अभी की बात करें ऑपरेशन सिंदूर की, तो उन्हें अपनी एक जो उनकी ड्यूटी थी कि हाँ एक बार मुझसे पूछ ले कि मैं जाना चाहती हूँ क्या पीछे, उन्हें मुझे पूछा, बट जैसे मैंने कहा कि नहीं सर ऐसे टाइम पे तो बिल्कुल नहीं, तो दे वर वेरी हैप्पी। और उन्हें एक बार भी नहीं सोचा कि उन्हें अपनी तरफ से रखना चाहिए नहीं चाहिए, उन्हें मुझे मोटिवेट किया। और हर रैंक से कोई भी हो, उन्हें आके मुझे यही बोला कि आप कर सकती है। तो इतना सपोर्टिव एनवायरनमेंट है, जब वो मुझसे क्वेश्चन नहीं कर रहे, मेरी कैपेबिलिटीज में वो क्वेश्चन नहीं करते, तो मुझे खुद पे डाउट नहीं आता है। तो ऐसा एनवायरनमेंट अगर आपको मिलेगा तो आपको अच्छा लगेगा काम करने में।
I want to ask one final time, Neha also as the assistant commandant of this forward post during an active role for the very first time from the BSF, your message to young girls. You of course have, defense forces in your blood. But sometimes others who don't know much about the BSF or other defense forces can get very intimidated, whether women fit the bill or whether this is a place for women, to work not just in a very physically demanding job, but also you are surrounded with more men than women, isn't it? So, आप उन लड़कियों को क्या मैसेज देना चाहेंगी कि वो डिफेंस फोर्सेस को अपना करियर समझें, उसमें आए? Why should they do that?
मैम मैं ये कहूँगी कि ग्राउंड रियलिटी समझना चाहिए कि अगर आप इस ड्यूटी की बात करें तो येस इट इज़ डिमांडिंग, येस इट इज़ चैलेंजिंग, बट येस दे आर सपोर्टिव। और अगर आपका सपना है और आप इसमें आके अपना जो ड्रीम है उसको फुलफिल करना चाहती है, तो आपको इन्वायरमेंट मिलेगा और आपको पूरा प्लेटफॉर्म दिया जाएगा कि आप अपना बेस्ट दे। ये मैं खुद इसकी जीती जाती एग्जाम्पल हूँ, मुझे मिला है अभी ये मौका, तभी मैं यहाँ पर हूँ। तो अगर कोई भी लड़की है जो यहाँ आके अपना बेस्ट देना चाहती है और वो मेहनत करती है, तो उसको हर कोई सपोर्ट करेगा मैम।
तो मतलब कि किसी मर्द और महिला में कोई फर्क नहीं है?
नहीं, जब तक आप मेहनत करने के लिए तैयार हैं, मर्द को भी करना पड़ेगा और महिला को भी।
जी, all right. On that note, I'll end this session with the BSF women officers, Assistant Commandant Neha Bhandari, Constable Malkeet, Constable Manjeet, and a Constable Swapna. A big round of applause for all of them one more time. The very first time that a BSF female officer has led a forward post during an active combat role.
Ladies and gentlemen, the resilient women here on the stage. A huge round of applause for all the lovely ladies here. Let's now talk about drones. UAVs. You might have heard that a lot, particularly during Operation Sindoor. So let's talk more about those very drones, as drones are not just the future. They are very much the present of the asymmetric warfare and industrial growth. So this next panel, the final one that we have for you this evening, explores how India's drone ecosystem is finally taking flight. So joining us, our Major General Indra Balan, who is the Military Technology Advisor at Amber Wings and the E-Plane Company. Also with him is Major Vishal Saxena, Vice President, Business Development, Idea Forge, and Smit Shah, President, Drone Federation of India. So please put your hands together for these veterans and visionaries, and joining them on stage is Rahul Shivshankar. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, that was a very stirring session with the Lady Armed Forces officers there. So that was very inspiring. We've also got three gentlemen who are going to inspire greater innovation and greater glory for the Indian Armed Forces. So wonderful having all of you here with us this evening. And I want to actually talk about drones. The only time someone said to me the other day, India has entered the drone club, and the only time I'd come across this word, the drones club, was in PG Woodhouse. Now, of course, drones have become household names. We all know kinds of drones, loitering ammunition, this ammunition, that ammunition. So I'm just going to ask you, look, there were many learnings from Operation Sindoor also. So, General Saxena, the question is, how did Idea Forge adopt its drone solutions for the extreme terrain and climatic conditions during Operation Sindoor? I mean, there are varied terrains along the border, as you know. So how did the deployment, what did the deployment teach you? What were the lessons?
So a couple of things. Obviously the journey didn't start from Op Sindoor, right? That was probably a culmination of whatever we did. So it started off way back in 2007-8, and I'll not go through that, how it started and all of that. But the inflection point came in 2016-17, somewhere thereof. What happened is the army called for a peculiar, requirement of theirs, right? And the world over, so we are lucky to have the Himalayas, and a lot of technologies which get made here will get made by either India or by the Chinese, because we only have Himalayas, right? The rest nobody has. It has its own challenges as well. So what happened in that particular requirement is that everybody envisioned what the requirement is, in a very different manner. And we thought, this is not going to work. And we took a contrary call to what the world was doing. And we were competing against the Americans, the Ukrainians also, and it was a global, contest, so to say, or it was actually a global RFP. We pioneered a technology called the VTOL, right, which is a vertical takeoff and landing, and then you kind of move into a fixed wing mode. So I think it started from there, right, that you started to develop solutions and technologies which were fit for your own terrain. And then, of course, you started to, get into areas because of the complex terrains, complex, environments in which we deal in. Now, coming back to Op Sindoor, right, a lot of our drones were used for ISR activities. And ISR is the kind of the bedrock of, unless you don't know what's happening on the other side or what you're doing, you're kind of be purblind, right? Now, one of the things which we faced is, prior to this, we haven't seen any EW electronic warfare, right? So you pretty much had a free pass. You could do whatever. No longer, all right? Were we geared up for it? I would say partially. We were geared up for it. We had solutions. So one of the learnings which came up is that even if I iterated in that 84-hour or 80-hour window, I had a solution for it. I didn't have the capability to transfer that solution to the front line. So that's a big lesson which I have learned, and I think the user has also learned. So we, what we could do in that time frame was look at some bit of ConOps and, use the technology in a very different manner so as to, fulfill whatever tasks which were assigned. But could we reiterate or iterate? Well, that window wasn't available. We had the solution, but we hadn't had the window to go and implement it. And that's something which we all need to think about.
Yeah, I mean, the Defense Secretary has talked about the importance of innovation. So, Major Indrabalan, I have to ask you this because, you know, you've both experienced the frontline and the lab conditions in some ways. What role do you see the technologies that we've employed, swarm technologies? You also saw a swarm coming across the border. It's quite scary for a large number of people to witness all of that. What role do you see that playing in the future, and specifically in the type of operations that we witnessed?
Yeah, so firstly, I see an inflection point right in front of us. Usually such a conclave will be attended by mostly men. Now I see more Sindurs here. So that itself shows that there's an inflection point happening in a different way. But that notwithstanding, the entire drone technology, I think, started taking off from the Azerbaijan and the Russian war that happened, the Ukraine-Russian war. India was still building on, I mean, trying to catch up with whether we can use drone that effectively or not. Though drones came into India a long time back. But to be able to effectively use it as a weapon system, and not merely a surveillance system, I think this has happened with Sindur. And it is Sindur, whether it is SWARM or LM or any kind of delivery mechanism, that has taught us that is a long way to go. For India to be able to produce weapon systems which are completely indigenous, which are in terms of, not just in terms of ammunition that you fire it, but the deep technology of the drone. That is where I think India needs to focus a lot. That's one of the lessons that has come out. For simple example, is that while the drone has its aerodynamics, it has its airframe, it has its propellers, everything is there. But that is one part of the drone. The main point of the drone is its brain, the autopilot, or the control system, and the navigation system, the telemetry. Now, these are the things I think we have realized during Operation Sindoor. This needs extreme focus. And in terms of our ability to match with world-level technologies or even what China uses, we are way, way behind. A lot of catching up to do.
So what's the specific feedback loop that you've got? You've talked about Operation Sindoor as being this learning curve. What exactly has been the feedback? And where are the gaps? Because that's really important to address, isn't it?
Of course, there are a good number of gaps. While all the sessions we've had so far are very positive, but I would rather be apprehensive and skeptical so that we learn the right lessons and we give the right message. Why so is because majority of the drones that we have deployed recently were, let's agree that they were assembled drones. They were manufactured, but I'm sure there are companies catching up. But in terms of the deep technology, we are still dependent on systems, the electronic systems, which are not entirely indigenized. And if that happens, the lesson that we learned, the spoofing of the drone that we heard of, the jamming of the drone that we heard of, the cyber attacks on the drone that we heard of, it's all because this technology is not yet indigenized. And this lesson needs to be taken forward. We need to create drone stacks, cyber stacks, and the kind of telemetry system. Navigation is another major thing. While a drone can have a navigation system, it can have an RTK-based system, it has a GPS system, but if that system is not supported by our own systems, the drone can get spoofed, it can get jammed. If you're dependent on GPS, that is the American system, GPS is owned by the American Air Force. So if you don't depend on American GPS to fly your drones, you know how vulnerable you are. If you're going to depend on Chinese Baidu to fly your drones, you know how vulnerable you are. Whether our Navik is yet ready for our drones, well, I'm sure the DRDO has used Navik to a great extent for inertial navigation. But is it available to our drones yet? Well, to some extent it is. But have we developed a system where Navik is fully, providing us that is one area of major, I would say, challenge that we have to face. The second challenge is about the telemetry of the drone. Now, a drone has a transmission mechanism, which is a transmission module, an RF transmission module. It can be a CDMA or a mobile transmission module, microwave. It can also be a satellite transmission module. Now, all these transmission modules, the basic modules are not in India. They have to be imported. So, I'm just giving a simple example. Imagine this transmission model is what transmits all types of data. Imagine this transmission model is not yours and it is foreign origin. Hopefully it is not Chinese origin, but the cheapest today available is Chinese origin. Whatever data you capture, whatever data you transmit, a bug can relate elsewhere. So this critical part of transmission module has to get indigenized. There is no doubt about it. So I spoke of three components, which I think we as drone industry and the government must focus on. All other parts are either, as I said, time leads in manufacturing, or maybe it is not sensitive to the extent of national security. So if I have to draw a good lesson on three different drone techs which we need to understand, ones that affect the sensitivity of the drone, the brain of the drone, the communication system, the navigation system. This is where the government's focus should be on entirely. Second is what is shortfall, the battery system or the power system, and also, let's say, the propeller system, etc., and the propulsion system. These are also critical, but not as critical as the first one because it doesn't affect your national security. And the third one are those parts which can be sourced in raw material merit here, which are less critical. So if these lessons are properly brought into the system, I think we are good to go ahead from here.
Well, Major General, you've been very honest, and one must compliment you for your honesty, because the only way we can actually address the situation is if we actually assess it right. So thank you very much for that, and I think you deserve an actual round of applause, because it's only when we question ourselves that we actually challenge ourselves. So Smit Shah, let me come to you. What mechanisms are being considered to enable faster access for Indian drone manufacturers to restricted or dual-use technologies, like encrypted communications or IR sensors? Because this is something, if you take off from where the Major General ended, would be the next obvious question to ask.
So first of all, thank you, Rahul and the group, for having me over. I will give some context on the question and then the answer, Rahul. See, the scenario of war, as we know, is changing. The first conflict was with people and sticks very close to each other. And you take that example where there is a person and a weapon. With every conflict, both the weapon and the person are going far away from each other, and the weapon is getting complicated and it's becoming improved, and there is a lot of tech being built and all. And very recently, this distance of the weapon and the adversary being far and the weapon being complex is exponentially, this complexity is exponentially increasing. So there are many more learnings beyond just building tech, which is that technology with any learning still cannot be built in a day. So there is a requirement for anticipation, wargaming, planning. In that anticipation, building a roadmap, and then building technologies based on roadmap. So we have a lot of learnings from Operation Sindoor. With the detailed learning from Operation Sindoor as well, and any amount of time given, of course, a lot of technology was never going to be possible to be developed in that short span for the same op as well. So we can have a lot of learnings, but do we want to, only look at shortcomings and stopgap solutions? So one of the institutional learnings that we are also advocating for the industry and the user to work together is do more scenario thinking and wargaming, specifically in the context of these modern weapons, which is the future aerial weapons called drones, that is going to be the future warfare. For conventional weapons, we have a lot of institutional mechanism, a lot of this wargaming and all of this there, but not for drones. So that's the one thing. What will this lead to? This will lead to an absolute clarity on how it has to be used, what all future uses can be employed on, and if the weapon has to be used like this, what all technologies and resilience, which Sir mentioned, would be required. So this thinking is the first step. Second thing is, in any conflict, you cannot really look back at the manufacturer and say, give me weapons. So there is a need for some kind of stockpiling and equipment ratios and all of that, which should be there. Which for drones, because we were not employing drones in active conflict as such till now, was not really the focus. So that is one more thing that is required. And coming to the specific question which you mentioned about the critical technologies, the access of which supposedly India does not have. Well, Indian Army recently conducted an exercise where about in the most complex EW hardened environment, as we like to call it, which has jamming, spoofing and all of the other things. This happened at about 3 locations. There are more than 5 manufacturers who have already demonstrated some of the capabilities. So totally saying that India does not have these capabilities is, in my opinion, in a wrong statement as such. India has some of these capabilities. Of course, we need to work very hard on this. And the only way to work hard in this domain is not just technology transfer, but building capabilities in-house, in the IDDM mode. In any future scenario, even if we have a technology transfer or a JV with a foreign company, while we may want an urgent requirement and we may be slightly dependent on that foreign company, there is one more dimension that is coming in. The country that we are dependent on may also be engaged in a conflict. Like one of the countries is already engaged in a conflict. Their manufacturing needs may be prioritized for their needs, for their requirements, their conflict.
You're talking about Israel?
Yes. So while we have been talking about, buying from outside, then transitioning to make in India, there is a thin line which is the made in India, which we need to focus on. And yes, we need to partner with companies, but we need to partner in buying the technology out and performing technology enhancements, as well as manufacturing them in India. Otherwise, if we continue to depend on them, yes, we will have very good technology transfer. We'll make it in India. We'll employ the weapon in a conflict. We will have a learning. But then for improvement of that technology, you still have to be dependent on that country. For example, Israel, who is already busy in something else. You are not a priority for the country now, that country. So what do you do then? The only way to go ahead for all these emerging weapons is to design in India and make in India, not just make in India. So that's one of the key things that needs to be focused on. And of course, one statement to your question, the research community, the industry and the government, all three are working together to very well define these problem statements and gap areas, some of which Sir alluded to, and are looking at very strategic interventions on how we are going to fund the research in India and what companies are we going to work from outside to bring the technology here, but with a specific focus again on design enhancement and capturing of that critical technology in India so that we get this transfer once and we don't continue to depend on this other country or the company as such.
So what we heard from the Defense Ministry, Major Saxena, was that, look, the orders will come. So there will be two challenges, I presume. One is that you'll have to scale up production. Is there a scalability challenge? That, of course, you have to build drones that are not just ready for an operation immediately, but also, of course, to replace, etc., etc. So that's one. Two, the point that Smith Shah and I think Major General also referred to, which is that it can't just be a print, and you're just given a print to execute, and you have to bring out something. You have to innovate, because there's not going to be any shortage of orders, and you don't want the government then to sort of turn focus and look abroad, say that you guys are not capable. So how do you meet this challenge?
So, very interesting question, okay. The way I look at it, I'm a big fan of a BCG 2x2, model, right? If you look at it from a demand and supply.
BCG means, I'm just, for our
Boston
viewers.
Consulting Group, the 2x2 matrix model, right?
Okay.
So if you're running any business, right, you have to look at the demand and the supply side. That's one consideration. Today, the second consideration, which often gets talked about, is about capability versus capacity.
Yes.
Right. I can guarantee, on this stage, and we've done it, we have the capability. And not only IdeaForge as a company. There are many other firms, and Smith is right there, who's from DFI. He deals with many other companies. We have the capability. There is no dearth of capability. Yes, has to be an incremental capability? Yes, there will be incremental.
So you're saying there's no dearth of capability?
There is no dearth of capability. There is dearth of capacity, however. Capacity is a question mark. You run a business, let's say, when you run a business, 60-70% of your revenue has to come from run rate business, which I call it business as usual, right? Maybe 30% could be variable. Today, it's exactly the opposite, right? 80% of my business today is lumpy variable business. And that's where
And why is that?
Because, because you're dependent on the defense, and there is no continuous so to say, orders, etc., which are coming through. It's a very lumpy business. And the moment that lumpy business is, for me to really, put capacity there is a big issue.
No, but the Defense Secretary seemed to suggest that we'll flood the market with orders.
We will. Okay. It hasn't happened till now, and I'm hoping it will, right? So that's the point number one. The thing is, And as an industry, as a company, I also look at Zara, let's just say, okay? Zara is the master of, so to say, looking at how do I look at variability, how do I look at varied demand and also. We are also learning, as an industry also, we are learning that, you know, if it is not continued capacity or continued demand, how do I really look at some of these things? The bigger issue, you know, and the bigger thing which we need to understand is that a lot of us are talking of Ukraine, Russia, Israel, and all of that, right? It is, and you know, we pick up some technology, and the biggest disservice we are doing to ourselves is that we pick up a technology and we say, you know, this worked. Well, that's not the case. You have to go a layer deeper. You have to, you know, peel the layers of the onion, right? The thing is that the tactics is going to get copied very easily. I'll do a thing, you'll probably do a counter in 15 days, and I'll do something, and especially in protracted battles, this thing's going to happen. What we need to focus on is capability. Do I have the capability? If you do something, do I have the capability? Do I have the industry which will be there at the front line and give me bug fixes, give me features, give me updates on my platform so that I can counter that. That's the capability which we should be talking of, and that capability will only come from Indian firms. A Lockheed Martin will not give you anything.
So strong pitch is being made for make in India, innovate in India, made in India.
Absolutely.
So Major General, let me ask you this. Do you share the optimism or the confidence that the Major has here about the fact that we have the capability?
Okay. In terms of human wear, I think we have tremendous capability. There is no doubt. I represent a company called as Amber Wings and the E-Plane.
Yeah.
E-Plane is a company which is building India's first flying taxi. There are only 5 companies in the world which are attempting that. And we have 7 aerospace PhDs, 35 plus MTechs working on different technologies.
Wow. And they're from all educated in India or from all over the world?
All over, but they're all Indian talent. And they're creating something world class. So while they are developing this an E-plane concept, they have recently decided to move on to the defense sector because we realize we need to be there as well for good reasons. Now, if this capability is capitalized, as I said, I'm optimistic and I'm confident both. But I'm also pessimistic. Why I'm pessimistic? Not because I don't want to be optimistic. I want to be pessimistic so that we come up with the right technology. And in doing that, one of the pessimism I will reflect is the problem of the policy initiatives in India. For instance, in Coimbatore, we had 35 lakhs worth of drone which was recently captured. Chinese drones. DFIs.
Sorry? You mentioned captured.
Chinese drones.
Captured.
Captured means they were illegally being smuggled inside. Why are they coming in? In India today, we have 15,000 ETF 610 drones all over India.
What do those mean?
They have just been imported. Now, on one hand, we are talking of indigenization. On the other hand, we are allowing these drones to come in as SKDs or CKDs and flood Indian markets. Now, when you talk of indigenization, the indigenization should achieve 3 levels of what we should achieve. In normal cases, you are talking about agri-industry, indigenization should achieve so that Indian manufacturing industry gets promoted. That's all the aim is. So you do that kind of indigenization policy initiative. But when it comes to defense, it is not just about providing opportunities to our youngsters. It's about national security. So your indigenization policy, when you talk of the IC content, should focus on what is more important from national security perspective and also from R&D perspective so that we own technology than from simply giving opportunities for startups to start something or people to manufacture something. Now this differentiation is what will lead us to right policy initiatives. And if you don't do this, you will end up similar things happening. Now, as the Defense Secretary rightly said, obviously huge orders are likely to come. But if you're going to go by the L1 syndrome, then these huge orders will again pick up what? These so-called Chinese drones coming in. Let me give a simple example. An Indian drone which costs 4.5 lakh rupees, indigenous, there are companies which are today making indigenous drones with 85% indigenous content, is 4.5 lakh rupees. Same Chinese ETF drone is 1.5 lakh rupees. How do you compete?
But is the quality as good?
They're doable, workable. That's because they produce mass. They want to kill our industry. They don't want it to grow. So they will, even if they can't afford it at 1.5, they're here to make sure that our R&D does not happen. They want to make sure that our drone industry doesn't grow. We don't become Atmanirbhar. So unless and until the government's policy addresses the issue of so-called dumping and so-called...
So you want a Trump tariff?
Yeah,
a big one.
Yes, because it's of national security concern. It's not just business. Where drones are today national security. Okay, let's talk of simple agri drones. You are flying agri drones today, you're allowing people to just fly. They're flying all over.
Right.
Where are they? Who's holding them? What can they do next? And when they're flying, they're also capturing terrain all over. Where is it all that going? So drones have become a serious national security concern. And if you don't address it at that level, we will end up in situations like what Russia ended up with drones attacking them all over.
So my final question to you before we wrap up, we're running out of time. Maybe one answer from each one of you on this. What is the drone that is working? Because someone said here, I think it was you, Smith Shah, that all kind of drones don't work. So what is that one drone that is working globally, militarily, to inflict a lot of damage, which is the top of its class?
I think in an active conflict, it is the 2-3 loitering munition capabilities. I will not talk about a model because in every country, every conflict, it is a different model.
Okay.
But the new realization is that loitering munitions are also an independent class of UAVs that need to be focused on.
Okay. What about you, Major?
For the ISR capability, so I'll talk about ISR.
What is ISR? Just
ISR is it's basically reconnaissance, right? So intelligence, surveying, and surveillance and reconnaissance, basically to get information out. I think I would say it is us. We are probably at the cutting edge. We have about 84 IPs to ourselves, right? So we are right there at the cutting edge. I don't think so. World over in the price to performance ratio.
Okay.
I think anybody can beat us.
Major General.
We are that confident.
Yeah, I think we have delivered. It's not that we have not delivered. All types of drones are working, whether it is Idea Forge or it is Rafe or any other company which has applied. There are a lot of drones which have actually grown. My question is not about whether they're working. Are they having the right technology and are they having the indigenous technology? That is what we are sitting here for. If once we agree that that is what we need to focus on, I think we're going the right lines. That's all.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for an enlightening conversation. I think the primetime anchor and me would have wanted the MOD, a representative sitting right there, so we could have had it off. But thank you very much. This was enlightening. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the very end of today's show. You've been a great audience. A huge round of applause for the gentlemen on stage. That wraps up that day of deep insights, bold ideas and proud voices. Thank you all of you, and thank you to all our speakers, moderators, and to each one of you in the audience for being part of this important national dialogue. Thank you for joining us at the CNN-News18 Townhall, the Defense Edition, co-powered by LIC, associate partners Kalpataru, Amber Wings and Reliance Industries Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us for high tea. Jai Hind.